Good evening and welcome to another Endless Celts Podcast. Today is Friday the 9th of May and I'm joined by Stephen, Franny and Ross. Endless Celts are pulling out all the stops tonight. We're looking for the few remaining fixtures of the season for Celtic, and we're welcoming everybody in the comments so far. We have got San Fran Celtic. Hope you're doing well, mate. I hope you're right, because so far it is a lonely evening, but it is a good quality evening. It's not about quantity, it is about quality. And we have Ronnie Pickering in the comments too. Welcome, Ronnie. Ronnie racing in its second pace there. But anyway, guys, it's a pleasure to see you. It's been a while. Thank you for kind of holding the fort. Because I've not been present for the past couple of podcasts. But anyway, tonight's Friday. I know that it's quite late, 9:30, but really pleased to see you guys all. So, Stephen, I want to start with yourself. Firstly, how are you doing and what's been happening? And thank you for joining us this Friday evening.
I've been all fine and well, mate. I had a good week at work. I was with my kids last night for a couple of hours and it was great. Now I have this weekend to myself so I can kind of kick back and relax and come on late and have a nice podcast with you guys. And I've also started back football, mate, for the mental health. It's been good to get back out there again and play and, you know, get back on the pitch, even though I can't run the length for myself and I'm puffing out of my arse after 10 minutes. But, you know, it's all fun, I suppose, isn't it? Good to get back out and be among people, like-minded people, and, you know, looking forward to the night.
Which position are you playing in the 11s, I take it?
It's sevens at the minute, but try and guess.
Centre
half.
I'm going centre mid.
Oh, see, to be fair, Franny, I'm a cracking passer of the ball. Like, I can see the game, read it, pick people out, no problem.
Very modest, it seems as well, Stephen.
Yeah.
Ross does like that. No, but like, I'm a centre half. It's the usual hard luck story. I thought I was a striker when I was a kid when I could move a bit. Got slow, got a wee bit fat, haven't lost the weight. Now I'm down centre back, so there you go. That's where I am.
Stephen, we do have history of certain podcasters comparing themselves to certain footballers. Who would you compare yourself to?
Oh my God! As a centre half,
Save me here. This could save me a lot.
As a centre half, I would say like Celtic colours or any team.
Anybody, Beckenbauer, Steve McManus, whoever.
Probably. Who would I say? I'm trying to think of a pass. Shut your mouth. He's going to Swansea. I'm trying to think of a ball playing centre half. Not making it too much, like, but
yes,
ball playing centre half.
Probably either Rio Ferdinand or Gary Caldwell. You can pick.
It's possible to take it off me.
What happened?
I compared myself to Craig Bellamy.
Just get on the shite bench, mate.
Yes. That's why I said Guy Caldwell. You can pick. You know, that's fine.
By the way, okay, so we'll get real. We'll get real. we know who Franny has pinned his colours to. I'll eventually get to Ross. Franny, by the way, I hope you're doing well. I love the top that you've got. I want to buy it before it goes out of stock. At the moment, I think it's still 40 quid in the Celtic shop. I was hoping for it to go down a little bit, but I would be gutted if I miss out on it. So lovely top. Anyway, how are you doing, mate? Good to see you.
All good, and I've just, by the way, anybody that's interested, Partick Thistle's just scored with about 2 minutes to go to make it 2-1 to them win the playoff final against Ayr United. But But speaking of tops, Gavin, as I was about to say before we jumped on and you asked me to leave it, regarding your top, it being the France, the USA 90s, Ross knows this one.
I know this story.
Being the USA 94 World Cup Ireland top, I was 10-year-old, so it's the first proper major tournament like that I can remember. I be honest, I can't really remember Italia 90 and things like that, but I can remember that one pretty well. And obviously watched the Ireland-Italy game with my dad. That was opening day of the tournament. And obviously Ray Houghton scored that beauty a goal. At the end of the game, I thought that was Ireland had won the World Cup. World Cup champions on that opening game of the USA 94.
I'll tell you what, Craig Bellamy when they made that mistake.
No, I Rio Ferdinand might have defended it better later enough. They would have let us get the shot away.
Franny, did you not watch the eventual final between Brazil and...
I watched the whole tournament, but it was just, I think my dad probably told me that at the end it went, no, they've no won it. I just, World Cup, that's all I seen and thought that was it. That was the World Cup. Didn't realise it was a tournament as such at that point, Gavin. I can only assume.
Fair enough. I'm glad you're doing well. Anyway, moving on to Ross. Ross, really good to see you, mate. It's been a while. So want to get to know what's been happening with you. It's been a while, and if you were to compare yourself in your playing days as a youth,
he's also not got to do with me. You done?
Would you have to compare yourself to?
Well, first of all, I'm good. Thanks for asking. I hope you're well yourself. I've not been on for about 3 weeks. I've just been flat out with work. Different things have came up, and I've just not been able to get on the podcast. And you probably not see me for another few weeks. Some will be happy because I'm back flat out next week. But I am all good, and I'm glad to be on the night and get a wee blather with the boys about Celtic. But in terms of a footballer, well, in my youthful days, I had a low centre of gravity. I was very, very jinky. I like to run with the ball. I knew where the goals were. So I would absolutely compare myself to Dougie Emery.
That's good. Okay, I won't compare myself to anyone. I don't really know if I'm qualified to compare myself to any professional football. I love to play on the right wing. I was right-footed. I was quite speedy, but I was the captain of my primary school team when I was in primary 7. But that was only because the best player in our team, his dad happened to be the coach. And so his dad never gave him the captaincy out of a fear of nepotism. So he gave it to me. So I wasn't the best player on the team, but I loved to play in the right wing. But at that time, I was made to play centre half because I was one of the kind of taller guys in my age group. I just love playing football, but I was never, ever close to making it as a professional. But I always wanted to be a right winger. In like the 90s for Celtic, I always kind of looked up to like Simon Donnelly because he was a right winger. I wanted to be of his kind of calibre, but it just wasn't meant to be. But anyway, I'm glad everybody's doing well. So the gang are back. Part of the gang anyway. So shit has happened. We played Rangers. And we're moving on to bigger and better things. We've got Hibs tomorrow. We've got a cup final to consider at the end of the season to possibly complete a treble. So there's a lot to talk about. I guess one of the kind of topical things that I was going to start off the podcast tonight with is end of season awards. Let's just start with that. So Daizen Maeda got the Player of the Year award. It was actually, coincidentally, it was the 9th time that a Celtic player has won it in 11 seasons, which is probably just a mark of our dominance in the league. But in saying that, you can always be the best team, but it's not always a God-given rule that you possess the best individual. But I think it's fair to say that we have possessed a very, very good calibre of players and personnel within our kind of dominant winning teams over the years. So Daizen Maeda has taken it. I want to start with yourself, Ross. Whenever Daizen Maeda first joined the Ange Postecoglou team, back then, could you ever have envisaged him being the main man right now? It's quite an evolution. We remember briefly the anecdotes of what we learned about him whenever he joined Celtic in his Japanese playing days, and he was a centre forward. He admitted in his interviews back in the Japanese media that he wasn't always the best player. It's just that he tried so hard, and his determination was one of the kind of key factors, that spirit, that behaviour, that attitude, which propelled him further than some of his peers. So whenever you think about whenever you think about Maeda, whenever he joined us, comparing it to now, are you surprised about that trajectory, or was it kind of written in the stars?
Well, it's funny because when obviously he was linked to us and it was rumoured he was coming and stuff like that, you obviously go on YouTube and you look at the clips of him, and for me, in the clips, he was doing the type of thing that he has been doing this season. So when he first came into Celtic and he started playing the way he was playing, I thought, that doesn't look anything like the player that I've watched in the reels. And I think because obviously what you kind of said there, that he was predominantly, what is it, Steve?
Oh no, a comment. It's not you.
Oh, I never seen the comment there. He was obviously in Japan. He was predominantly playing that centre forward role. He's come into that now, but even I think probably even before he came into that centre forward role this season, I think that he's been playing more this season like he had been in the reels that I'd watched. But when he came in, he obviously went out onto that left-hand side and he looked really awkward. I think we can all agree that he was really awkward with the ball at his feet. He didn't have that technical ability that I thought he actually did possess. But I would have to say, I don't know if I'm surprised going off of the clips that I watched beforehand, but the player that we've seen in the first couple of seasons, I never thought he could become the main man as the way he has been this season. Listen, he's an amazing team player, fantastic. That never surprises you that he's like as good that way. But to become the main man and get 30 plus goals, that has shocked me. I think that I've for a number of seasons now, Maeda has been. He was my favourite player. He kind of dipped a wee bit, and there was a couple of other guys like Matt O'Reilly had kind of sort of overtook him. But this season he's back to mine and probably most people's favourite player. I think Brendan Rodgers has helped him technically. I think that Harry Kewell, even before that, has helped him. Probably more on his delivery and how to play that winger role, because obviously I think as we all know he was more accustomed to that striker role. But I think, as I've said, to get 30 plus goals, I'm amazed that he's been able to do that this season. But I'm not amazed that he's still one of the top players in the team.
Stephen, kind of building on the comments for Ross, Hatate, whenever you look at him right now, he kind of epitomises the way that we play, possibly more so under the spirit of Ange, where we were like, never stop, always pressing, always going. I know that under Brendan Rodgers, it's a little bit more football-wise diplomatic and a little bit more measured. However, Maeda has kind of became one of the fulcrum players of our team. I would almost, I hope this is not a lazy comparison, but if you think of N'Golo Kante at his prime as the kind of the buzz bomb, the kind of the bumblebee player of the midfield, possibly Maeda is that type of equivalent in the forward position, no matter where you're playing him, on the left, the centre, or the right. I wanted to ask you, how pivotal has it been for Kyogo's absence for Maeda to kind of propel himself into the awards and to actually win the award for Player of the Season? How pivotal do you think that kind of exit was for him to be the main man to steal the show?
I don't think it was pivotal, because Kyogo wasn't really putting up trees for the first part of the season. It was always between Maeda and Kuden who were going to sweep up the awards, and then obviously Kuden took that drop off, and albeit he scored a couple there a couple weeks ago, I think it was against the Johnson. But Maeda, like what Ross was saying, when you're like with these players, you don't know anything about them, especially Japanese, coming from the J League. Some of us could be a bit ignorant towards it. I know I probably was at the time. But when you see what he brings, and it's also his journey in football as well. He went to a Portuguese side very early on in his career, and he failed. He had to go back home. He had to regain his confidence, and then obviously Ans managed him for a period of time, and they were successful together. And thankfully, Ans took the chance on him and brought him back into European football because, without Ans, I don't think anyone's going to take a punt on the likes of Daizen Maeda or Kyogo or Rio Watate. Maybe I'm a bit naive in that, but no one was talking about them anyway. And to see them coming into the squad has been fantastic, and especially the evolution of Maeda coming off the left. And like what Ross said, I totally agree. He was so cumbersome sometimes, and his touch used to bounce off him miles away, and his composure was lacking. But I think what Rodgers has done from the AND system, he's made him more composed in the final third. You see him now looking up and picking his passes, picking his moments to get the ball in, picking at the right times to get in the box and make the correct runs to be on the end of either a goal or making an assist. And his work rate's infectious. And I think it's a feather in his cap when you've got Eric Dyer, the Bayern Munich team, coming out and saying that basically the Bayern Munich defence were petrified of Daizen Maeda and the pace that he can bring. Do you know what I mean? So for me, that there's a good inkling of the quality player that we have. And I think it was Sam Fran put in the comments as Maeda staying. The hinge that kind of the summer window hinges on that. Look, I don't know that situation. Daizen seems committed. He hasn't never made any noise about leaving the club. He seems happy and settled. I know his wife's given birth to his third child over in Japan, and he had to make that trip before the Glasgow Derby game, which probably affected him in that game. But he's like what Roger said. He's probably up there with the best in world football for pressing. The kind of running stats. I remember there was a stat going around when they first signed him. In the J League, they had like a top 10 kind of list of sprints, and he was 9 of them. There was only one other player to get into it, and he was up there. And obviously unknown quantities, but his journey and the evolution in the Celtic jersey, and to be over 33 goals at the minute, I think that's a fantastic return. And he's up there in double figures assist as well. So yeah, I don't think the Kyogo thing was pivotal. As I said, Kyogo, his heart wasn't in it, in my opinion, and he wanted to check out and move to another European club, which is within his own right to do so. Unfortunately, that's not working out for him, but definitely Maeda was on the path way before he left to be the main man for Celtic.
Yeah. Franny, Stephen was talking about Maeda's kind of missed opportunity in Portugal. I do remember a story that it might have been, who was Ange's second in command in Japan? It was the Hun guy.
Muscat.
Muscat. I heard that Muscat had touted Maeda to Rangers a couple of years ago. Before obviously we obtained his services. But Rangers never pulled the trigger for one reason or another. I did hear that rumour. I'm certainly not made it up. I just can't remember the source. But I'm sure it was Muscat, because it was either him or Craig Moore. Don't know why Craig Moore comes to mind.
I think I've heard that rumour as well, by the way. So you've heard it somewhere, because it's ringing bells with me.
Well, I guess we kind of need to count the lucky stars that Rangers weren't astute enough to pull the trigger on that. But sometimes, I guess, it needs a manager who knows the player, who knows that league, in order to kind of like say, I want to get this player. And certainly wasn't a lot of money that we paid for Maeda. But sometimes if you don't know the player and you're just going by second-hand information and recommendations, then it's not enough for you to compel you to make that transfer. So obviously it's worked in our favour. I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on it. The fact that he's had such a fantastic season and how he's transitioned to a central striker, which one podcast member in our group, McGinty, had always kind of touted him as that being his best position. It happens sometimes people can be right, and it looks like McGinty was. For me, my own personal opinion is, and this sounds like a cop-out, but Maeda's best position is just playing for Celtic. Doesn't necessarily always have to be as a central striker. Sometimes it can be as a left forward. As long as he's playing for us, it benefits the team massively. But whenever he's not playing for us, I think we look like a total different team. So I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on the effect that Maeda's had, because I can't think of, going back to the 90s in my lifetime anyway, I can't think of a single player who ever can resemble the type of player that he has. He's got massive attributes, like Stephen spoke about, world class pressing caliber. But whereas sometimes whenever he's got the ball and he's got too much time to think about, maybe that's whenever you might see a weakness of him, or maybe technical ability, maybe passing ability. But sometimes he can be irrepressible, and sometimes he epitomizes what Celtic can be on their day. Certainly the kind of the Bayern Munich game, and whenever Celtic have been their best against Rangers, for example. I just want to get your thoughts. Can any player in your recent memory ever compare to Maeda? And whenever a player, second question, whenever a player does get the Player of the Year award in Scotland for Celtic, the obvious question is, how much is he worth? Who's coming in for him? That sort of thing. So again, the inevitable rumours that might accompany this accolade will then kind of beckon the future of being without Maeda. And what would Celtic be like without a player of that calibre? Would we have to kind of reinvent ourselves? So it's a double-ended question. Does anybody compare to him in your lifetime, and what would the future look like if we had to let him go? Because he's 27 years old, he's bringing up a family, they're Japanese orientated, they might not want to stay in Scotland for too long.
Off the top of my head, Gavin, I can't think of anybody. I think he's quite unique in what everybody's kind of said. So it's kind of, he is a unique player in that sense. Yeah, we've had, I don't mean that as we've definitely had better players than Maeda, but I think his qualities, like that pressing game, the speed and just energy alone, I can't think of the top of my head a player that we've had that can seem to do that for 90 minutes. Like, you look at the Rangers game, yeah, it wasn't his best game, especially in that fixture. He's usually really pivotal in that, but we used to laughing at.
Because I've stifled a yawn again.
All right, I didn't even notice that. But you see his energy levels there right up to the very last minute, and obviously it comes out after the game. Rodgers admits it was obviously away back home, so the guy's energy alone, just I can't think off the top of my head, Gavin, like anybody that comes close to competing with that. And I think you kind of summed him up well, saying just having him in the team is good for Celtic. Like, that's the best compliment I think you can give Maeda. I think it is amazing how much. Well, is it amazing how much he's shown going in the Midley Park? Possibly, because I think we've all said in the past, maybe not so much this season, but certainly in the past, that if Maeda had a lot better technique, he probably wouldn't be at Celtic. Now, he's improved that, I think, a lot this season. And I suppose Rodgers and Maeda himself have got to take a lot of credit for that. But it shows the type of player that it doesn't really seem to faze him where he's playing. He puts in the same effort, puts in the same shift. And obviously then he gets his reward at the end of the season with this Player of the Year award. I think when you consider the season, he's walked away with. Maybe the other one that you could maybe argue is maybe Simon Murray, considering Dundee's maybe not had a brilliant season, but him personally has had a fantastic season. But value-wise, it's a weird one with Maeda. I mean, I suppose earlier on the season, we were talking 25 million for Nicholas Kuhn. So would you maybe be looking at that type of figure? Obviously, none of us are wishing him away. We will. If he was to leave, you're never replacing Maeda. I don't think you're replacing him. It's just, he's that unique a player. I think they're very hard to come by, that a guy of that ilk and what he gives you. Yes, we'll be able to move on, because in the past, better players than Maeda have left, and we're doing okay. But I say, not to wish him away. It always surprised me that Postecoglou never once came in for him. I feel like his energy and his athleticism is totally made for the Premiership. Maybe his technique still, but I think his athleticism gets him far.
Yeah, they went for Timo Werner, who probably a kind of a similar player in terms of the position he occupies in the pitch and his energy. and his attitude and his running, and probably his lack of prolificacy in front of goal. Maybe Daizen Maeda can frustrate you sometimes, and certainly Timo Werner can do that as well. They went for Timo Werner from they got a loan from Leipzig, which was quite telling. The fact that Leipzig let him go on a loan, even though that they've been kind of relatively struggling as well this season. And Werner, I don't know what's happened with Werner at Tottenham, but it hasn't worked out. I don't know if he's back in Germany, if he's sidelined on injury. Yeah. But I get what you're saying. There was a kind of a clamour, not from us, but from maybe some people that Maeda would be suited to Postecoglou's style. And I'm glad that he wasn't that type of manager who went back to his old club to raid the kind of the treasure. But it is what it is.
Apart from when he done it to bring up the Celtic.
That doesn't.
I think as well it could be an image thing. I mean, if Postecoglou starts signing players for Celtic, for Spurs to start, I mean, the grief he's been getting this season, I think one bad performance from a Daizen or let's say a Kyogo, it would have increased tenfold. So he's probably as well thinking to himself, you know, he could probably get Maeda for relatively cheap money compared to English money. But Timo Werner's available. He's a more fancy name. He's better caliber player. He's been around the block. And as you said, Gav, he's essentially Daizen, you know, in terms of what he brings, the kind of the speed of the game, the pressing. Maybe doesn't have it for 90 minutes, but I definitely think there's an image and a snobbery towards the kind of SPFL from the upper end clubs that maybe don't want to take the chance on, you know, Virgil van Dijk, case in point, had to go to Southampton before he made the jump up to Liverpool. So maybe it's that type of thing, because I totally agree. Daizen's the profile of what Spurs and Ange are doing. It's the same system. He played at Celtic and he played at his previous club, so he would have fitted in quite seamlessly. And yeah, I'm glad he didn't go, and I'm glad Ange didn't, you know, put the bid in. So we have him for now, and I think we should be fucking loving it at the minute.
No, that's true.
By the way, sorry, Gav, I think the biggest compliment you could actually pay Maeda is, obviously we don't want him to leave, but if he was to leave in the summer, touch Harry Wood, I think that obviously we lost Matt O'Reilly, we lost Jota, we lost Kyogo. I think if we lost, again, just for talking's sake, a Hatate, a CCV even, I think that Maeda would leave the biggest void in the team. His departure would leave the biggest void in the team out of all the players. That's how good he is and how important he is to the team. More in the sense of the team overall rather than the individuality.
Aye. I think he epitomises our pressing style that was first kind of conceived under Postecoglou, which is kind of carried on under Brendan Rodgers. And if he was to leave, it would be almost a departure from that playing style, which would be really, really sad to see. That's my own opinion anyway.
I understand that.
Moving on to the next of the kind of the end of year awards, and I guess this does kind of beckon the question, Ross, staying with yourself, it does kind of beckon the question, do these end of year awards kind of come around too early? So Manager of the Year, and it was awarded to John McGlynn, which is actually the second year running for him, and he's won it a third year as well. I think it was back in 2011 for Raith Rovers, I think it was. But the fact is that a lot of people are saying that if Brendan Rodgers had won the treble, then it would be, unless you're like a diehard blue nose, otherwise it's impossible not to give Brendan Rodgers the Manager of the Year award if he wins the treble. But the fact is that they're calling it now, before the season is up, before the cup competition is up, before people go on their holidays. So is it kind of like silly to be calling these awards at this time, or is it live and let live? Are you kind of happy that John McGlynn has won it? Do you think he was a deserving character? Or do you think, as a Celtic fan, that you think it's a little bit harsh that Brendan Rodgers wasn't given the vote?
in terms of when the vote is done, I think it's always been that way. If correct me if I'm wrong, but I do agree. Well, certainly if you're of that opinion, Gavin, I do agree that it is a little bit early because we obviously, like you've said, we've got the cup final to come. There's a strong chance that Brendan Rodgers could get a treble, which is an unbelievable achievement. Whether you're with Celtic or anybody else, you still have to go and win the games and win like all the cup games. You could have an off day and lose that. It's an amazing achievement. In terms of John McGlynn, I think that, listen, if you're of a Celtic persuasion, for the most part, you're going to say Brendan Rodgers should get it. If you're a Falkirk supporter or just a Scottish football supporter in general, you could make the case for John McGlynn to win it because I think that's him had back-to-back promotions. I mean, it's a tremendous achievement. I know Falkirk are a big club, but to come up into that championship and come up first time of asking after being out of the Premier League for nigh on 15 years, something like that, I think that what John McGlynn has done is brilliant. I think Falkirk have played some really good football. I think we've seen that when they came to Parkhead earlier in the season, albeit I think they lost 5-2. But listen, there's a case to be made there for John McGlynn. Whether Brendan Rodgers wins the treble or not, it's not just like your trophy haul. It's the team overall. And Celtic are expected to go and win the league. Falkirk probably weren't. And the way that they've done it, albeit they did falter towards the end a wee bit and let Livingston sort of back into it, but they got over the line in the end. I'm neither here nor there, to be honest with you. As long as Celtic are winning the league and winning the trophies, then it doesn't matter to me whether Brendan Rodgers gets Manager of the Year or not. It probably doesn't matter to Brendan Rodgers, to be perfectly honest, albeit where everybody says he's got an ego. I think that he's more about the team's accolades than the personal accolades. I think that because he's the manager, the team are going out and doing what he's asking them to do. So whether he gets the accolade of Manager of the Year or not, he's still getting that.
He still gets Gucci belt, doesn't he?
Aye, but he's getting that accolade anyway because he's the manager of a winning team who are picking up silverware. That's better than any individual accolade, in my opinion.
Exactly. Stephen, I was going to move on to yourself, the Young Player of the Year. I will get your thoughts if you have any particular opinion on the John McGlynn saga. But Franny, with the kind of similar question to Ross, John McGlynn picks up a Manager of the Year, second time running. Obviously, a fantastic achievement for him and for his club. To get back-to-back promotions is brilliant. It's brilliant. However, in terms of Brendan Rodgers fulfilling his mandate on the projection to getting a treble, that's pretty much all you can do in terms of fulfilling your mandate. So again, same question to yourself. We can't change the date, as Ross highlighted. It has been a kind of historic thing where they kind of call it early. Any kind of sour grapes from yourself? Or are you happy to kind of congratulate John McGlynn in that one?
I mean, I share a lot of Ross's views on that. Like John McGlynn, it's got to sound like total sitting on the fence, but I think John McGlynn is certainly deserving of the award. But equally, it's if Rodgers goes and wins the treble, obviously, as we've said, when it's announced, it's total. There's nothing we can do about that. I suppose it would have been. They've kind of been saved by the fact that Falkirk didn't falter because I think they lost 2 of their last 3 games and obviously won against Hamilton the last game to guarantee them going up. So it could have been a wee bit. I say a wee bit embarrassing because it's obviously voted for by fellow managers, so their peers. So it's not like it's the media or anybody like that. It's actual professionals in the game that vote for this award, which I found interesting when you consider Jimmy Phelan's in a cup final and maybe could finish third. He could potentially win a cup final and finish third, and David Gray got more votes than him. So it's the timing has kind of sort of I want to say asterisk is probably the wrong term, but maybe I could put an asterisk against some of the candidates, and Except if Rodgers goes and wins the treble, there is a case to go, well, how's he not got manager there? He's literally, yes, his mandate, like John McGunn's mandate probably isn't to win that league. As big as Ross said, as big as Falkirk were, they've came up for the division below. It maybe was consolidate, but be at the top end of the table. Maybe try and sneak into the playoffs. That was maybe his mandate at the start of the season. And then he's got up. Whereas Rodgers, it will be win the league. I don't think it's ever should be we must win a treble, but I think Rodgers might be guilty of that. I think there's a wee bit of a media narrative where it's just, well, it's Celtic, you've got to win the treble. That's our barometer now. I think with some folk in the media where cup games, anything could happen. It showed last season against Kilmarnock. We weren't great. We should have had a penalty with Haksabanovic. It came out after that the referees VAR called that wrong. So things can go wrong in a cup game, and you've not got other games to sort of rectify that, where mistakes or bad performances in the league campaign, you can rectify that. So I do think Rodgers is deserving of it if he wins the treble. I think he's deserving of it now, but equally, I think John McGlynn, it's hard to argue against John McGlynn as well, considering what he's done. Like, it probably wasn't meant to win the league this season, considering he just came up. But I think it more makes a mockery of when the vote goes in, if you like. That Rodgers, like I say, Rodgers could win the treble and not get an award. But like Ross was saying, and you were saying, I don't think it'll really bother Rodgers.
Because whenever the voting happened, that was before Falkirk had secured promotion. So theoretically, they could have fucked up on that last game that they had and not been in a position to secure automatic promotion. But
John McGlynn would have still got manager of the year.
Exactly.
But equally, again, you could probably still argue for it, going, well, it's because probably Worsley was going to finish second and go, well, you've just came up and you've just missed out in the last day of the season. You're still in the playoffs and maybe go up.
Maybe rephrase it to manager of the, the seventh, eighths of a season. I don't know if you want to put it that way. Stephen, to throw
it's funny you mention, because I was listening to Open Goal and Gordon Dale said that he was always sure they'd done it this early, because if they'd done it at the end of the season, players had holidays and all that. Obviously, don't get as much time off now. So nobody was really got to come to the World, so that's why they have it so early.
Stephen, to throw a curveball at yourself, see if Celtic had hammered the Huns all season, if it was a complete whitewash in terms of the Glasgow derbies, do you think that would have strengthened Brendan Rodgers' hand for this award?
Probably would have. I think these awards, some of it for me is token gestures and, a pat on the back and saying well done for a good season. I don't really think they have much gravitas. Yeah, you're recognising who the best player, best manager was, but like what Franny said, the fact that Rodgers can win a treble and sit there and his wee mantelpiece is empty, but it's filled with money and trophies from the team. I mean, so he's not going to be too fussed. The whole John McGlynn thing is interesting, because if you listen to his kind of interview, he credited Brendan Rodgers with a lot of it, because he came into Celtic, he had a down period after the Rafe job, and he was bouncing from job to job, and Celtic hired him as like a tactical scout, and he worked on the Rodgers for, I think, the majority of the time that he was in charge the first time around, and he said he learned his philosophy over again, how to play football, out of possession, in possession, and that's what he basically models his team on. So effectively, Rodgers has coached another team to a league championship to come up to the SPL. So he's patting the back. An assist, a secondary assist with Arnie Engels territory here. But no, look, I just think, fair play to John McGlynn. If Rodgers won it, he wins trebles like they're nothing, and wins trophies season after season. So I think what you are saying here as a collective, that he wouldn't be too bothered. But the John McGlynn story, the back-to-back promotions, I think Falkirk played really good football. Watch that game, the kind of clinching the game, and they have a couple of ex-Celtic players. Calvin Miller, we've seen him play when he was a young kid, and he looks like a new player. He has him playing kind of up front and stuff. So be interesting to see how to do next year. And I hope they don't ditch the philosophy and go route one and sign all these has-beens that's been around the SPFL for about 9 years, and just keep what you're doing, stick to your philosophy, stick to your guns, and see how it goes for you in the SPFL. But look, it's one of these things, Gav. Maybe it's the date, maybe it's just because it's Celtic, like what Plunge McNugget was saying, that no one really takes our achievements serious anymore because we make it look that easy. But Roger just said many a times that it's not easy with the work goes on behind the scenes. You have to be on it 24/7 unless you're Alameda and wants a drink. And I'm only joking. But like it's one of these things. John McGlynn's got it. He's got his team to the SPFL. We'll see how it goes next season.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And just a final thought from yourself, Stephen, not a Celtic player who won this, but Lennon Miller got the Young Player of the Year award. 18 years old. We've heard a lot about him, a lot of rumours about Celtic. Are you, just the one question to yourself before we move on to everyone else, are you fearful of not bringing him into the Celtic fold? Because if you think about past Celtic captains, it does kind of fit a familiar pattern. If you talk about Paul McStay, Tom Boyd, Scott Brown, Callum McGregor, these Scottish players who provide the fulcrum, the linchpin for years and years of success, who are talented but are content to stay with Celtic and be one of the highest earners and be respected, but they're content to stay with us. And they play plenty of European football, plenty of domestic success, not the same success that any other type of player typically would earn unless you stayed at Celtic. Lennon Miller could fit that fold. So he's won the Young Player of the Year award, and this might be the chance, and possibly the only chance, to attain his services. There's rumours that he might go abroad, that he fancies going abroad. He's certainly got a father who's been a professional footballer, who knows the game, who knows the pitfalls, and will be advising him very well. And we've seen photos of him wearing a Celtic scarf outside Parkhead, so we know that he's got that sentiment for the club. But he's probably got his head screwed on his shoulders, which I think is right. So I guess my question is to you, are you fearful that this might be a massive opportunity that we could possibly miss if we don't bring him in this summer?
No, I don't get the hype about Lennon Miller. I really, really don't. I do not understand it. I get that he has some nice touches and he's very cultured on the ball, but off the ball, he's an empty shirt. He doesn't track back. He's not quick. He's not athletic. And Rogers talks about a profile of the player. For me, that's the complete opposite of what he talks about in terms of robustness, energetic, the athleticism, the quickness over the ground. I understand that people are comparing him to Callum McGregor, but there's a couple of major differences. Callum McGregor has a turn of speed, get away from 2 or 3 guys with one body movement. I haven't seen Lennon Miller do that. The majority of this season, he's been on the injury table. And to me, it's the state of Scottish football that a guy who's been out injured for 6 months of the season has won that award. But, you know, it's a bit like, is there a shortage of young players coming through? I know the likes of Josh Mulligan, he's 22. Lyle Cameron, I think, the same age, so they don't qualify for the award. But if they were a year younger, they would probably sweep that up. I'm not fear. Arnie Engels, he's been overlooked drastically, in my opinion. I think people are still holding the price tag over his head. And I think people still have the weird comparisons to Matt O'Reilly when he's not that player. I mean, I think his goal involvements, I think he's 12 goals and nearly the same amount of assists. So he's up to over 20 goal involvements in about 40 odd appearances. So he's done well on that front. And I think he's still grown and matured in the Celtic top. And I think we'll see even more of him next season. But this whole fearful Lennon Miller, I don't understand it one bit. It's one of these things, and you will know, I always look at Scottish players and I'm always touting them and saying, look, they might do a job. Ryan Porteous, for example, and you know, a few others have had before. Mugabe, I think, played for Motherwell. I think he's down in the Championship in England. You know, there's been a few others over the years, but they haven't really mounted anything. And Lennon Miller might do well in, for me, the likes of the Serie A, the slower pace type league, and more time on the ball. But I think if we sign him, and people are talking about, you know, a replacement for Rio, I think they're off their rockers, to be honest. He's nowhere near a Rio's level. He'll never get to that level, in my opinion. And as I said, look, he's one I'd happily not spend £6 million on, in my opinion.
That's fair enough. You've completely shat on my question, but it's an honest answer. what's a podcast without honest, straight talking? So thank you for that. Maybe you're right. That's the one kind of criticism I have heard about Lennon Miller, the fact that he doesn't have much pace. And I guess if you don't have, as a central midfielder, that kind of short burst of pace, then it could be debilitating. It was quite interesting whenever he heard his comments, whenever he called up to the Scotland squad and he says, within a few months, I hope to be the best player in the squad. I think John McGinn kind of tried to kind of put some dampeners on that smoke and just say he probably didn't mean it like that. Maybe kind of he misspoke as a young player in the media. But yeah, that's an interesting comment, and maybe more than a few people might feel that way. There's a lot of hype, and you're probably right. The fact that there's a lack of genuine young talent coming through, then maybe there's too much hope put on that guy's shoulders. So you could be right, and I guess time will tell. Time will tell. The last thing I want is for Celtic to overspend again on a certain player and for him to not turn out to be a good player. But we will park that aside. Guys, I know that we did the Monday podcast and we spoke about the not so much the post-mortem of the Celtic and Rangers game, but your afterthoughts on the Celtic and Rangers game, the performance, blah, 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 the attitude, what could have been done, the fact that Rangers played a diamond and it took us too long to figure it out. And by the second half, we did, but we weren't efficient enough. So I don't want to linger too much. But I wasn't a part of that conversation. But I'm eager to actually speak to you guys because I've not really had the chance to speak to anyone kind of face to face, if you want to use that phrase. So Ross, in terms of the Celtic and Rangers game, 1 each at Ibrox, I thought it was a missed opportunity. People are calling it the Barry Ferguson playing style. People are calling it Ned ball, which is a phrase which is very, very catchy, but we might not have enough time to get used to it because there could be a transition in the summer. But do you think it was a missed opportunity, or do you think it was good enough, the fact that Celtic kind of stopped the rot after 2 defeats on the trot against Rangers?
I think it was probably a missed opportunity. The reason I say that is I would have to say that Celtic over the piece probably created the better chances. Rangers had a lot of the ball, but I wouldn't say they played through Celtic that much. Obviously, with their goal, they managed to do that because they got the turnover when we tried to take the quick corner. But the chances that Celtic, the opportunities that Celtic had, obviously the one with Ida, where he has the chance to play James Forrest in. How he doesn't get that ball right, it's not even a difficult pass. He tries to be too precise when I think it was Franny said on Monday night that he just needs that ball out in front of him and to run onto. So that was a huge opportunity. Then he misses the chance when he gets through in the keeper. He does well to win the ball high up the park, but then when he gets the opportunity, I think it's not that he's a bad finisher. I don't think he is, but he chose the wrong option in that moment. There was a couple of other chances. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. There was one or two other chances in the game. Obviously, that takes his goal well, but for me, I feel like I think Celtic were comfortable enough in the game, albeit Rangers had a lot of the ball, but they really need to stop giving away silly free kicks because the Rangers are a far more physical side. They're a taller side than Celtic, and when that ball gets put into the box, Tavernier's delivery, whatever you want to say about the guy, his delivery is first class, and 9 out of 10 times. 9 out of 10 times. I'm struggling with the numbers there. 9 out of 10 times.
Barry Ferguson, come on now.
9 out of 10 times he puts it right where you need the ball to be, right on the spot. And that first, I think it was the first minute, Liam Scales, he has two actions to do in the first 5 minutes after that, and he gets the two of them wrong. He makes a mistake and ends up giving a corner away. early on, and Rangers hit the bar for it, and that kind of set the tone for him in the game. I don't think he ever recovered for that. But listen, I don't think we played well enough in the game to say, we should have won that game, but we created enough really good chances in the game where you would have to say, if we're a bit more clinical, then we probably do win the game. One thing, I'll finish here, but one thing that really pissed me off about the game, and it wasn't a Celtic thing, it was all I've heard after this game is Raskin's a baller, Raskin's better than Engels, Raskin's brilliant. Raskin is a decent football player, right? But he buzzes about that park. He's a nuisance. He's strong. His strength is getting in about folk, getting wee niggling fouls in, and he continuously gets allowed to keep making the same fouls. Doesn't he get booked? If he gets booked, because it's a culmination of fouls, if he gets booked, I don't know, maybe first half, early in the second half, when he should be booked, then that takes away from his game, and it then takes away from Rangers' game because he's the main man for them. But for me,
Ross,
he does...
Could I be a nuisance? Sorry, could I add on that? Do you not think maybe to the kind of indignation of some of the people in the comments, do you not think that Raskin has added to his game and evidenced it in the Glasgow derbies that he's also capable of being very influential in the final third?
I would agree with that. Certainly, in the last couple of games, for a wee guy, I don't know if Celtic, because he is so wee, just think, forget about him, he'll be all right. But he has got a good spring, and he's absolutely a very decent footballer, and he has improved since when he came into Rangers to now. He's a better player, but I think one of his greatest strengths, as I've said, is getting in folks' faces, getting in about them. You even notice Cal McGregor at one point saying to the referee every time, talking about Raskin, every single time he says. And for me, he should get booked at least early in the second half with a culmination of free kicks. He doesn't. And then, for me, listen, it's just speculation, but I feel like the referee was very lenient towards him. And it's because I feel like he knows that if Raskin gets booked, that takes away from his game slightly, and it takes away from what Rangers want to do slightly. And then the young boy, Bailey Rice, comes on and he gets booked with his first tackle. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, Raskin has just been allowed to buzz about that park, get away with absolute murder, not get booked, and then the young guy comes on and he'll go, all right, he's not going to be as influential. I'll just book him straight away for his first tackle. It was bizarre.
Can I add on to that as well? Sorry, Gav, the interjector. But do you not, like, Raskin and Daizen Maeda are quite similar. They're always niggling, they're always, chopping at people's ankles, they're giving fouls away, but never really getting punished for it. But see, on the other hand, Ross, do you not think that's what's missing sometimes from our midfield? That kind of snappiness for the tackle, that kind of get in about them. Because we spoke about their press before, me and you especially, we've had conversations about this. And I think sometimes our midfield kind of shirks away from that battle. And that's when they tend to overrun us, and they turn over the ball, leads into counter-attacks, and then we're at 6s and 7s trying to defend it. Because, look, we know we have fantastic individual players in the midfield, but sometimes Cal McGregor can't do it all. Sometimes I think Hatate, maybe Engels as well to a certain extent, doesn't like the physical side. I mean, Engels was trying to put it on Raskin in the first 10 or so minutes, but then he faded away. Then Raskin, as you said, just buzzed about. No one really opposed him. No one really challenged him. No one put a foot in him. And it's like, do you know, I think sometimes we miss that kind of snappiness as well to go back into their faces. And that's, schoolboy shape, but do you know, I think we miss that.
And when was the last time our midfield had that bite? That's a fair question as well.
I think that Cal McGregor's got that in his locker, and certainly in these games, I've seen him do it. Listen, that's not Cal McGregor's game per se. He can win you a game in other ways and take the game by the scruff of the neck. You've seen it. I think it was an Ange Rangers Celtic game. I think actually, didn't he all but clinched the league, a 2-1 win at Ibrox. We went 1-0 down early on, and Cal McGregor just got the ball and ran with it and set up the equaliser and that type of thing. But I've seen him obviously down the years had altercations with Barisic and a number of other guys in the middle of the park. He has got that bit of bite in the games. He's done it with Cantwell, albeit, listen, Cantwell's no, Ken, he's not the biggest guy or whatever, but he thought he could get in about Cal McGregor and try to bully him, and McGregor didn't allow him to do that. But I do agree. I agree with what you said in principle, Stephen. I don't think it's so much that Celtic shirk away from that. I just don't think that's, for the most part, it's not what we do. We try and win the game by guile and passing through teams. And that's all well and good, but we all know that in these games, and it has shown, certainly this season, that when the chips are down, you do need that bit of bite, that bit of dig, just to go and win that midfield battle. And I think it was shown, certainly in the first half anyway, on Sunday, that Rangers were winning every second ball. I don't know if it was because they were playing the diamond, that sort of flooded that sort of like middle area, the pitch, if you like, whereas Celtic were a bit more spread out. But they were winning every second ball, and Celtic needed to work that out. And like you said, Gavin, it did probably take them a wee bit longer than you would have liked. But I think it was, I can't remember who was on co-coms, but I think whoever it was, had mentioned that all Celtic had to do was, because like Greg Taylor normally comes inside and plays that inverted role, he was saying what he needs to do is stay out wide, and that stretches the pitch, and Rangers, because they're playing that diamond, struggle to get out to him. And that's all well and good, but playing out wide on the touchline is not Greg Taylor's strength. It's playing in the park. And I think probably you have to credit Barry Ferguson and his team for saying, right, we'll play a diamond and sort of negate what Greg Taylor can do, because he's obviously watched, can't remember who Celtic played when Greg Taylor came back into the team and he got the man of the match. He was outstanding on the day. And he was Kamar Mackay, and he was running the show to an extent in the middle of the park, playing that inverted role. Rangers stopped him doing that. I think that we'll have more in it. Listen, I don't know if Taylor's going to be there next season. For me, I hope he is. But we'll have more in our arsenal next season, and that if Rangers decide to do that sort of tactic again and play that diamond, we'll have Kieran Tierney, so we can keep the pitch wide then, whereas it's more difficult for Greg Taylor. We'll have different options, better options in game to change it or start with that, and like obviously fight against that diamond or whatever Rangers decide to do.
Franny, I want to give yourself obviously an equal opportunity to speak about the game. For me, I thought that there was a kind of familiar story in a lot of ways. Adam Idah, we probably got a typical performance from Adam Idah. He had an instinctive opportunity and he took it very, very well. But at the same time, whenever he had moments to think about it, he had a one-on-one with the keeper, he procrastinated and he messed up. He had a fantastic chance, as Ross said, to play in a ball to James Forrest. It was a simple pass. He messed it up. And right away, after that missed opportunity, Rangers went up the other end and Dessers scored. Scales, who I think has been instrumental in some of these tough games, who can be a warrior in our box. I thought he looked a pale comparison of what he has stood up to be previously, which is why I tried to stick up for him. Greg Taylor, I don't think had a great game. James Forrest, the champion of hide and seek at Ibrox, get taken off at the hour mark roughly around that time anyway. He's lost. That sounds like a slur on him, but I think nowadays he's lost that explosiveness. It looked like a missed opportunity tactically from us. But one of the kind of the comments from the people in the podcast, Sinisalo, we've learned much more about Sinisalo in this type of game than what we have at a game at Parkhead, whenever you're not so much under the cosh. I thought Sinisalo did kind of stand up to the challenge a bit more. What was your overall thoughts going into the game? Your expectations that you wanted just to avoid a defeat because of the kind of the track record, or again, as we're speaking about, do you think that with the calibre of players that we've got, and by the way, Hatate, I thought Hatate was very, very disciplined in that game. Normally, Hatate kind of positionally he loses his head, but I thought he was good to track him back, and I thought he was quite effective. He was secure in his passing. I was really, really happy with Hatate, but overall, it just didn't come together for Celtic, and I was really, really hoping we laid down a marker and say that's why we're champions, and make them aware of that in their own stadium. But we just failed to do that. It was a missed opportunity in my eyes. But where do you stand on that?
Kind of similar to yourselves in that. I think a lot of it's frustration, the fact that obviously we're off the back of 2 defeats against them, and I think when you put it that on one hand is not ideal, but then if you consider the whole time maybe even when Rodgers is here, that's his 3rd defeat in total, I think, against Rangers. So in that sense, it's not a bad record he's got against Rangers. But I can see the last few games, especially not necessarily Sunday there, but the 2 in arguably the cup final were almost carbon copy games in the sense that way Celtic played and how Rangers played. It was the same mistakes we were making, didn't seem to learn. So I think certainly myself going into Sunday was, have we a bit of deja vu, because you were saying in the previous derby games, have we learnt the previous games? And I think to an extent we did. There was still the mistakes about giving silly free kicks away, set pieces, we didn't defend them great. But I think in the main, without really causing them tons of bother, I think we did learn a bit. Like, yes, they set up a diamond, and obviously Rodgers came out and admitted after it they struggled to cope with that for the first 20-25 minutes. But after we worked that out, I felt we were fairly comfortable enough in the game. Ada's obviously spoke about Ada's chances there. Not try to defend the guy. He should score that 1-on-1. But it just gets highlighted how bad it gets highlighted even more, the fact that 30 seconds later they go up the park and score. And Dessers, who, if you read the social media sites and that as well, is a much maligned figure. He's probably their version of Ida in a way. But he actually takes a goal really well. He takes that, sits skills on his arse, takes that extra touch, and it's a really good finish. And I think that only highlights how big the Ida chance was, or how big the miss was. But he did kind of semi-recover for that. He scored early in the second half. And we had a really good goal. And he actually had a very similar chance where he tried to do something similar but blazed it at the bar. For me, it was a very frustrating game, Gav, because I thought, I mean, you do watch football first with your eyes, but at the start, I think we had like 65% possession at Ibrox, which is absolutely mental when you think about it. But like Ross was saying, I think Raskin gets away with a lot, Daizen Maeda gets away with a lot with fouls, and it kind of starts the game a wee bit. Not to say that we really, it felt similar to the 3-2 game at Parkhead when we got back on level terms. We just never asked him enough questions. I thought Hatate did, like you said, I thought Hatate had a really good game. I thought Forrest, certainly first half, I thought Forrest had a really good game. He was always positive and tried to go forward. It maybe never worked out, but he always tried to go forward. I did think our defence was shaky, especially Taylor and Alston. Taylor and Alston were decent come forward, it just defensively, I don't think they were great. I thought Engels had a okay-ish game. I think he was getting in good positions, but it just felt like he just was trying to play that killer pass all the time instead of maybe running with it. Because he always seemed he was picking up in good areas with a lot of space around about him, and that might have been down to Diamond. I don't think. And then equally with Taylor, the first time Taylor puts the ball over the top for Maeda to run, we end up scoring out it. I think he ended up firing it into Maeda, running with. Incidentally, what happens to Kuhn a lot, it seems to be in these big games, Kuhn seems to get the ball fired right into him when he's running back towards his own goal, and you're like, what's this guy made to put it over the top for the guy to run onto? And Maeda was getting that a lot as well for Taylor. It was just kind of either Taylor holding on to a wee bit long, then giving it, or just putting up the line. It's like, put it over the top. And I say the first time we done it in the second half, felt like the first time in the game, Maeda goes on, gets a goal. And just unfortunately, that one right at the end where Hatate were talking about nicks in Maeda for all like, I mean, a lot of folk are saying he could have slid in Johnny Kenny. I'm not sure that pass was actually on. There's 2 Rangers defenders there, and equally
The pass was on, man.
it probably was on,
A
Gav.
better touch.
It's on if he takes it. I think that sort of last touch, if you like, it has to then try and. I would still say shouldn't try and correct the goalkeeper. Should maybe just try and prod it forward again, and you might, who knows, you might get lucky like Daizen Maeda got against Young Boys, where it kind of ricochets. Might ends up on Rogero, it might ricochets to Yang or Johnny Kenny. But the way Yang was playing, I wouldn't have fancied him to score, even if it was an open goal. He was fucking terrible when he came on. But it was a lot of frustration, Gavin, because I thought we controlled big bits of the game without causing tons of bother. I can never really remember us under the cosh. Igamani had one chance at the end where, again, Scales just ended up on his arse, but so did Igamani, and the chance kind of went. But on Sinisalo, I thought, since he's came in, we've not had any heart and mouth moments and went, we really need Michael back. He's handled himself well. And like you say, this game had a wee bit more to do. You've seen he was barking instructions to the defenders, which is good to see. He's obviously got a bit of stature there. He's not scared. And what I kind of like that. Now, I appreciate our game is building for the back, and that's what Schmeichel likes doing. But he wasn't afraid to just lump it to the corner, and maybe try and turn the defence. I kind of like that at times where he just wasn't necessarily a punt up, but it didn't always have to go to Carter Vickers or Scales. He was happy to try and get Taylor, get Maeda. Schmeichel's no plastic. Let's calm down. It's one of these players that, not to discredit what Sinisalo has done, but Schmeichel's just no suddenly turn shite because he's injured at the end of the day.
That sounds like a football journalist from Denmark who were giving Schmeichel pelters.
I know. What I have liked about Sinisalo after the game is the first that I can remember that's properly called out these things getting chucked at Celtic players and things like that.
He's obviously quite agile if he's able to duck and dive and dodge.
It seems to have everything but the kitchen sink chucked at him, innit? It was vapes, it was lighters, obviously the bottles was chucked. Mugs, I'm sure he means plastic cups and that. I'm sure there's no actual fucking mugs.
I don't think
cups
so.
Best
dad in the world mug. Take it to the game.
But fair play to him for calling it out, and he didn't just. He actually picked up other instances where it's actually he gave instant. Now clearly it has happened at Parkhead before in previous, but it seems every time we go to Ibrox now that there's an instant like that. You go back to Joe Hart with the bottle smashed and the goal mouth. Obviously our physio was hit earlier on this season. I think Arnie Engels was hit, and then obviously the Sinisalo. So it seems like every time we go to Ibrox now, something's happening. So fair play to Sinisalo for calling it out, because I don't know how much autonomy he's had for the club to kind of go down that. I'm not saying he's backed the club into a corner or anything, but he's maybe went off topic, if you like.
I think if that's his territory, and if he feels that he's getting pelted with projectiles, then he's within his right to call it out.
100%.
Whenever I heard like the headline, it might have been taken out of context. I heard that he was saying between 30 and 40 things were getting thrown at him. I just had this image of Neo in the Matrix doing this. Anyway, by the way, my favourite sci-fi movie, without a doubt, my favourite sci-fi movie. What can I park it there? I'm glad I got all your views on the.
Never got mine.
You never got mine, bosses. I'm done.
Stephen, apologies. The stage is yours.
No, look, I just wanted to add on to what the guys were saying, to be fair. I think it's right that Sinisalo called out the shite that you see in Ibrox, and I know we're all having a laugh and stuff, but he's right. If that bottle hits him in the head, it's, it could be a potentially serious injury. The vape hits him in an eye, or a coin hits him in the head. We've seen all that happen before, but nothing usually happens in terms of punishment. But I kind of go back to what you were all saying there about the match and stuff, and been a bit of missed opportunity. I kind of look at these matches differently. And for me, look, I've said it, and I said it on Monday, I'll say it again. I don't think we're miles ahead of them. I really, really don't. I know the league table tells us differently, right? And that's fair enough.
No.
But the last
7 wins. It's 7 wins
No,
ahead of them.
I get that. But what I'm saying is, if Rangers find a way to sort out the consistency with the smaller teams,
I agree.
I think we're banging. I think we're banging trouble, and we cannot
Flip that.
escape that.
What if we sort out the issues against Rangers?
Yeah, you can flip that, and I agree with that as well. So we have issues against them.
Rewrite history here.
But I'm not rewriting history.
This season? How many times did we play Rangers this season?
5 would it be?
How many did we win?
Oh, 2 and 2 in a draw. I get that 100%.
And we're a cup out of that. So
we only won one 90-minute game though, Franny.
We've been outplayed.
But I'm not saying it's like we're miles and miles ahead of them, but I don't think it's as close as what you might be making it out.
No, but if you let me get them the point, if you let me get them the point, I'll be able to kind of reiterate what I'm saying. I'm trying to say that we've been outplayed probably in the last 3 or 4 derby games, and we can all agree to that, to be fair. I think that we haven't learned from our mistakes against them for whatever reason. Yeah, we kept it down to 1 goal, and it was a 1 each draw, blah, blah, blah. And it was kind of a dead rubber in the end anyway, but you don't like to view them derby games as that. I just believe that we've missed opportunities in years gone by to really get ahead of them and get ahead of the game. We have given them an opportunity to catch up, and I know people don't want to talk about takeovers and stuff, and it's all hypotheticals and what can happen, and people might not want to have the conversation, but for me, it's staring us in the face. If these people come in, they're not stupid, and I keep hearing people saying they're not going to invest because it's this and it's that, they're not all this. They're coming in with a plan. These guys are astute businessmen with billions of quid behind them, multi-fucking enterprises over in America. They own leagues. They're promoted to the Premier League. That they had's written off now because of the promotion. And it's like, people are, I think, are a wee bit naive not to believe we're going to have a challenge in the coming years. I believe the next couple of windows that we have are vital to get ahead again and really push the pedal to the metal. And I might be overreacting, but I'm loving all the glory, obviously, and all the trophies and all the trebles. Keep it coming 100%. But just in my opinion, I just don't think we're years ahead of them. I really don't. I think at most we're a season ahead of them, if I'm honest. If we get things wrong, then they're on our coattails. That's my honest opinion.
I heard in a podcast, a Celtic podcast, that the margin for error for Celtic is superior to the Rangers' margin for error. So
yeah.
the example that I'll give is whenever we were pushing for the 10, obviously we lost it. Rangers won that title, and I remember speaking to my friend who was a Rangers fan, and they went the domestic league campaign invincible, and they'd slaughtered Celtic, and they were over about 25 points superior to us. It was a horrible season, and I remember saying, you need to push on right now if you're going to be superior to us next season. And he said, why do we need to do that? We spanked you by 25 points or whatever. We beat you in most of the games. You barely laid a glove in us. And I said, but Celtic are stronger off the park. All we need to do is get our house in order, reshape, and we'll go again. And he failed. And he remembered the 90s. But just that 1 year of success got to his head as a football fan. But he failed to recognise that you need to strengthen from a position of strength. And Celtic can afford occasionally, like, I've got a question later on about transition of managers that I'll pose to you. We can afford one bad season, but because of our off-field superiority, we can recover so much more quickly than Rangers. Rangers had one period of success, that one league that they won, but they failed to capitalise on it because they never had the staying power, and they lost their manager. You know, Steven Gerrard had left, and then they just capitulated. And now we have regained with 4 league trophies now. That's the kind of the margin for error, the example. So I guess it kind of goes back to your point anyway, Stephen. I'm kind of waffling. I forgot your original point, but I think it was tied in.
Yeah, no, it is tied in. I just think, I'd like to hear Ross and Franny's opinion on it too. I just don't think that we're years ahead of them. I think we missed the opportunities to go years ahead of them, like you said, Gav, of maybe feel to capitalise on some windows or some transfers that can happen. But for me, this thing coming in the takeover, it's real. It's going to happen. It's not going to fall through. It's happening. This is going to potentially, kickstart them into something in the coming years. I'm not going to say it's a quick fix. Not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is, for us to stay ahead and keep ahead, the next transfer windows and the seasons ahead, we really need to, push the pedal to the metal, so to speak. But it'd be interesting to hear, Ross, what you think about that, and Franny as well.
Well, listen, it looks for all the world like the takeover is going to happen. I've never said aye or no either way. And it's going to obviously make them financially stronger, which in turn you expect Rangers to do what Rangers usually do, and that is go out and spend the money to really get a real strong challenge to Celtic. That's what I've just got to say. It's bang on. If Rangers do come with a stronger challenge, Celtic, I think Celtic will be well aware of what's going on over the city. They'll be more clued up as to what's going to happen than what we probably are. I think that if Rangers become stronger, Celtic, they go to the next level and they spend more money. And it's only, listen, it's going to benefit the league itself in terms of competitivity, but it's going to probably benefit Celtic longer term if Rangers are stronger, because then Celtic, the board, will be forced to invest more, which in turn will hopefully bring in a higher calibre player, like what they've tried to bring in the last summer window, and then in turn that will probably make us a bit more, even more competitive in Europe, like we were in previous years when Celtic were neck and neck going for titles. We were stronger in Europe. I think it's a good thing all round, but we do have to stay ahead of Rangers. For me, I understand where you're coming from, Stephen, and that I don't think we're miles ahead of Rangers in terms of Rangers have shown that they can now beat us in games. It's whether they're able to sustain it over a longer period in terms of a full season or that. They've came up well short this season, evidently. And they were closer to us last year because we were well short of where we have been in previous seasons. We're back to where you would expect us to be, or thereabouts. I think since Rodgers has come in that first season, it took us a wee while to find our feet, but we finished the season really strong. We continued that on, and we've went from winning a double to now going to hopefully win a treble. Or we're certainly even closer to a treble anyway than what we were last year. There's a definite improvement in the team, and as long as Rodgers there, I expect us to improve again going into next season, whether Rangers are stronger or not. I'm still confident that Celtic are far enough ahead of Rangers and can stay ahead of Rangers, whether they spend money or not. I think Celtic, I'm confident that Celtic will still be good enough next season over a 38-game season to go and win the league. They might not win a treble because if Rangers get stronger, it's difficult to win trebles. We know that. And as I said earlier in the podcast, you can have an off day. And it might be that we come up against Rangers in a cup game. And as they've shown, they can beat us in individual games. But listen, it's all conjecture. We don't know what Rangers. We don't know what Rangers are going to come up with. We don't know what sort of investment they're going to get. But time will tell. But what I'm confident in, and I feel I do know, is that whatever Rangers do, Celtic will match it and more. That doesn't guarantee success it just gives you a better chance. But for me, I think that Celtic are still a wee bit ahead of Rangers, as I've said, over the course of a season. But these individual games, Rangers are gaining confidence now. I've said previously that I felt like we needed to lay down a marker in that game at Ibrox to stop Rangers gaining even more confidence. We didn't do that, but we didn't lose the game. And Rangers, I think they played to their almost top level. They were really going at it. Whereas Celtic, for me, in that game, what's that?
Ibrox there. You thought Rangers played to the top level?
I thought they in terms of, I felt like they were maybe not their top level in terms of play, but they looked like they wanted it more than Celtic. I felt like Celtic were going through the motions. And an example of that is Rangers picking up second balls. They looked more tenacious in the middle of the park. Whereas Celtic, I feel like we're in the game going, right, okay, we want to go and win the game, but we'll not overexert ourselves too much because they know they've got this cup final on the horizon. There was already 2 or 3 players out of the team for that game. So probably in the back of the Celtic players' minds are like, 1, we don't want to get injured. 2, we don't want to overexert ourselves. We want to conserve energy. And albeit, listen, I don't think that from a fan's point of view, that's not the way it should be. But from a player's point of view, and certainly a modern player, that there might be different levels of thinking come into it with that eye on that cup final.
Okay, if I could fast forward kindly to kind of Franny's response to Stephen's question about Celtic strengthening while the threat of Rangers reorganising, restructuring, and a possible refinancing. There was a couple of comments from a guy who had brought his AR.
He's like, made a few good comments.
He's like the Buddha in the past 10 minutes or so. He said it's not about spending big, it's about spending right. And I completely agree. It's about what you've got, making your finance count. That's a very, very, very good point. So, Franny, it was a poignant question raised by our good friend Stephen. What's your thoughts about that?
I mean, kind of similar to Ross in the sense that I don't know what that, like, I fully expect this takeover to happen. Like, the fact that you see these guys at a few games and that recently, Dave King's obviously came out and said it's 90% done. Whether folk want to take what he says with a pinch of salt or not, I don't think, without really knowing how all this carry on works, I don't think for a legal and business side of things, it would be the right thing to say if the deal wasn't very close. I don't think he would be doing interviews with TalkSport and saying the type of things if the deal wasn't imminent. Yes, it still might not got through, but I think the fact that he said it's 90%, he reckons it'll happen by mid-June. I think he said it was mid-June anyway, or around about June. The fact that he's putting timescales on it suggests that it'll be more a surprise if it doesn't than does happen. So I fully expect this investment, this takeover, call it what you will. I mean, it's a takeover by all accounts. Some might call it investment. It is what it is.
I think we need to prepare ourselves that it's going to happen. But the question is,
I think we do.
How effective are they going to be to impact the playing squad for next season?
I mean, that's like the $1 million question. Like, you don't know what this takeover is really going to mean for Rangers. Could it be? I mean, there's rumours coming out that the aforementioned Raskin might be going to Leeds. So is Rangers maybe going to be a feeder club? Now that could actually work out okay because they could maybe get some players from Leeds. Maybe, like, obviously I think that the 49ers have got ties in some shape or form. I don't know at what level with Red Bull. So they could it be down like a Red Bull sort of a format where obviously we go Salzburg, Leipzig, then going to pastures new. And obviously there's good players came through that sort of a setup. So it kind of just depends on obviously these guys, they can't come out there now because the deal's not went through, but it's one of these ones, until they actually say what the investment in this takeover looks like for Rangers, it's hard to say for sure how that totally impacts on Celtic. But I think we have to look at it. They're not going to come in and, I feel like Stephen said, and I think maybe Ross even said it, they surely are going to invest in the club, especially in the first transfer window. It's not every takeover, every investment. It's usually what happens. There's a couple of big signings, or certainly try and lay down markers anyway in their first window to get off in the right manner. But like folk were saying in the hours, it should only then focus Celtic more, and do what we've been doing and just invest in Brendan Rodgers. And I fully believe that will always give us the best chance. If we're investing in Brendan Rodgers, obviously we could take a transfer window like last summer, and then Rangers could take a really good, like have a Postecoglou first season window, and probably have a right good chance at the end of the day. I do think we are still a good few years ahead of them. That caveated way, just a lot of things can change quickly in time frames depending on transfer windows at the end of the day. Managers leaving, for example, Rodgers goes and jumps ship again. Things like that could happen. Rangers get a pause. Aye, well, that's it. Because we don't really know what this takeover looks like, it's hard to totally say. But I know Celtic will outwardly be saying we're not caring what's happening over there, but sure as hell the folk within the Celtic's walls will be having a wee eye on there, saying, right, we need to keep an eye on what's happening here. Because if as a PLC, it makes sense for Celtic to always be ahead of Rangers, to be in Europe, to be at the top table in the Champions League, to win, because then that then helps the shares up, makes them more money at the end of the day. So it does benefit them to have one eye over there and saying, well, we need to try and keep ahead of it. So it's just it's a lot of what I've seen out. I'm not one of these naive folk that are just, maybe as a coping mechanism. I've heard it in other Celtic podcasts where it's, there's this and that, there's PSR, there's financial fair play, whatever it is, and then other folk have debunked all that, and you're like, it's almost like they're wanting to pretend that it's got to be blow up and smoke and it's not going to affect us at all. It might not. I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows right now. It's a very political answer. I feel like I've gave Gav. It seemed like I've fuzzed totally all right round it, and it's because I didn't know what the takeover looks like at the end of the day, and I think it's hard to answer off the back of that.
That's fair enough. And I would vote for you in my local constituency. Going to kind of park it there and move on to a different segue. Can I just inform you guys that I was actually made a recent pilgrimage to Lisbon to visit the Estadio Nacional. It was obviously a familiar pilgrimage to many Celtic fans, and I completed it. Whenever I say I completed it, it's almost like I walked to the place. Obviously I flew there and I flew back.
That's how you've not been on for a few weeks, Gav.
It was for 2 days. It was just simply a city break for the sole purpose of going to Lisbon to visit the Estadio Nacional, because there's more than just rumours. It looks like a certainty that they're going to be doing renovations to the stadium, which could theoretically make the stadium look unrecognisable to the stadium that the Lisbon Lions had accomplished their feat in 1967. So the goal was to get there, see it, get a few kind of photo opportunities, soak it in, and then go back home, and that's exactly what I did. It was a great experience. I got there on the Tuesday as soon as we landed, after checking into the hotel and getting changed, made a beeline for the stadium, and we arrived at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So just to make anybody aware who do have any plans going there. We were refused entry at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We were told that you can only get in between 9 and noon. So the following day, after much tears and like offers of bribes to the security guard, we had to go the following day. And we arrived there smack on 9 o'clock in the morning. And there was already about 12 Celtic supporters there. And mostly all from Glasgow. It just felt like a family, you know. It just felt so good talking to the guys and looking around at the stadium. We weren't allowed onto the actual track because there's a running track around the park. The security guard was watching us at all times. Unfortunately, we weren't even allowed into the changing rooms or allowed up to the place where Billy McNeil stood. But it was just great being there. Whenever the security guard did go away, we noticed and people started running on just to touch the grass and get the photo taken and run back off again. And everybody was kind of alternating and doing that. But there was a security camera which was catching all that. And the manager of the security told one of the guards, and he ran back on and he was raging with us. But by that point, when we were getting told off, everybody had managed to get a photo opportunity. So for me, it was a once in a lifetime moment. I'm so happy that I was there. I managed to get my photo there and just see it and experience it. It was just a wonderful opportunity. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you guys and with the commenters. But the next section that I wanted to move on to was the agree to disagree. Now, I have been inspired by our good friend Ross, bottom left here. Ross, would you be kind enough to explain to me, just to reaffirm what I'm doing here, and to the viewers, how does the agree to disagree work? What's the rules?
Well, it's essentially you come up with a statement, if you like, rather than a question, or a statement / question. Aye. So you say that, but I would say that you're saying what your view is, if you like, and then asking who the question is to, or the statement is to, whether they agree, disagree, whether they agree, strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree.
Got you. Okay, so the first proposition, and I will throw it right back to yourself, Ross.
Okay.
A director of football should be installed before we appoint Brendan Rodgers' successor. Do you strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree? And to everybody else in the comments, feel free to opine.
I would say I probably disagree with that. Reason being, I'm maybe just a bit old school. I don't feel like a director of football is absolutely paramount. I think it's one of these new fangled things that have been brought into the game, have come about. It has been in for a number of years. Listen, it works for some clubs. I don't think Celtic playing in Scotland absolutely need it. Maybe people will make the case that going into Europe is maybe more needed, but I'm neither up nor down with it. I think Celtic have had a really strong, successful 25 years without a director of football. So I don't think it's paramount. I wouldn't be absolutely against it in much the same way as I wouldn't be absolutely against Celtic signing Lennon Miller, but I'm not arsed either way at the same time.
Was that a disagree or a strongly disagree?
It was a disagree.
Fair enough. Good comments. Thank you for backing up your opinion. Franny, please.
I would, similar to P. McLaughlin, I would agree, but it's probably, like Ross touched on, it's a new, it's kind of the way modern football is. I understand why Ross is saying he disagrees, and it's maybe a wee bit of him and myself. Just you want to cling on to what football used to be like, and I do understand what he's saying, and we probably don't necessarily need it to continue domestically the dominance without kind of going back onto the Rangers takeover. But obviously, with that, but I think European wise, it probably works. The idea and principle of one is good, providing they do the role that we can expect a director of football done. Obviously, we had the boy David Webb, Stephen, on that kind of explained there's different ways you can be different sort of ways a director of football can and does work within a club. It depends his remit. I think the sort of most basic, or most people's understanding, is it's how the football will run. It's how the football team will play in a system. So in that sense, it makes sense to have a director of football. If you want to kind of continue that, you look at Brighton, for example, where they probably already know if the manager goes now, they know the next manager. So I understand from that point of view why a director of football works. But obviously Ross makes a good point. In Scotland, we probably don't necessarily need it, but I would probably go with agree, but it's probably just because it's more fashionable to have one, in fairness.
It's a fair enough comment. And what about the Rio Ferdinand of our podcast? What's your opinion?
Fuck's sake, fuck's sake. I forgot about that. Fuck me.
Don't worry, I had me.
For me, I would agree. I think Strange love the doctors bang on. It's the continuity aspect of things. I think for a long time, Celtic really haven't, had a list of options for management and had a continuity list and that type of stuff for people in the future who may or may not be of interest to them in the coming years, because a lot of these clubs think years in advance for different scenarios, and you see them sticking to a way of playing. The academy kind of maligns with that as well, and it's seamless just throughout the academy years right up to senior football, and I just don't think we have that. I know our much lauded Pathways manager is fucking off to Swansea and to be assistant, so we've lost the Pathway guy. We need a new one in, maybe a director of Pathways or something like that. I don't know, fancy new title. But I think for us as a club, we've always talked about restructuring it. I know they tried it with Don Mackay. Maybe he didn't fit the norms and he didn't really comply with the whatever the fuck it was at the time, and he got sacked pretty quickly. But I would do it. And I know David Webb was saying, Franny, like you said, there's like technical directors and stuff in football now. So there's different titles you can have that basically in a roundabout way mean the same thing. But yeah, I would agree. It's something we need to do for forward planning instead of going to the same names. Let's say Rodgers does leave eventually. We'll be going back to fucking the same shape we've seen before. So it's good to have that continuity in place.
Yeah, I guess the motivation behind my asking that question was having continued dominance under a particular manager, and then you change it, and the manager looks good on paper, but sometimes it doesn't work. Like Tony Mowbray, or to a lesser extent Ronnie Dyler. I know that we still won the league under Ronnie Dyler, but maybe under stronger competition in the Ronnie Dyler era, then we might have lost our kind of trajectory. And
sorry, Gav, I was just going to say, I don't think Celtic appoint Ronnie Dyler if there's a stronger competition. Carry on.
That's actually a good point. That's a good point. You appoint a weak man whenever it's weak competition. Probably a good point. Okay, so the next manager to agree to disagree. Sorry, no. Next question. Ross, back to yourself. Brendan Rodgers is the best manager that we've had since Jock Stein.
I'm going to.
Fucking brilliant question.
That is, it's outstanding.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to disagree with that because I don't want to diminish what Brendan Rodgers done, because winning trebles and going unbeaten in a season is really, really difficult. But you have to take into account, as much as we don't want to, the Rangers that he was up against, they were really, really poor. This Rangers team are certainly a hell of a lot better than that first Rangers team that he was up against. And it's shown now that Rangers are able to lay a glove on them, albeit Celtic are still winning the trophies, which is what you want to do. But for me, I don't know if it's financial or just a different time in football. I think it's more difficult the way football's set up now for, I don't want to say lesser teams, but teams with smaller budgets to make as much of an impact as it was, for talking sake, when Martin O'Neill was there. But for me, I would say that because of what Martin O'Neill done in Europe in terms of it was unbelievable that he never got out a Champions League group for the points that he accumulated. Absolutely unbelievable. But he made Celtic what certainly none of us in our lifetime had ever seen Celtic doing, and that was competitive. And Parkhead was a fortress under him. And then he was able to go and win. He was there 5 years. 5 years, he won 3 titles out of 5, and the other 2 that he lost, I think he lost on the last day. Both titles, if I remember right. I think I think it was we lost the one at Rugby Park, and then we lost the one at Fir Park. So for a wee bit of luck here or there, he would have won 5 in a row. He won a treble. He brought a treble back to Celtic Park. He's listen. The football maybe wasn't as easy on the eye as what a Ange Postecoglou or a Brendan Rodgers team is, but I think that we can all agree that you put Martin O'Neill's team up against any of the teams, I think Martin O'Neill's team wipes the floor with them. So for me, I would probably even go as far to say I strongly disagree with Brendan Rodgers being our best manager since Jock's team, because I think it's Martin O'Neill comfortably. Okay.
All about opinions. Franny, what's your thoughts? Brendan Rodgers, the best manager since Jock's team.
I mean, I was probably on the disagree side as well, but I think Ross Kelly nailed it. I would maybe go something like Ross, not to diminish anything that Brendan Rodgers has done. I would probably go strongly disagree, because I think it was P. McLaughlin and Ross has both said that Martin O'Neill is a big factor in why we are where we are now and why Rangers are where they are now. He came in, showed them respect, said they were the benchmark, and we had to aspire to be that. And by God, have we done that and more. So for me, I'd probably strong, like, without trying to sound like I'm no happy for what Rodgers has gave us in his 2 tenures so far. He's been brilliant for us, but when you consider what he was up against then, and now to a certain extent to what Martin O'Neill was up against 25 years ago, and what he came in off the back of, I think it was about a 22-point deficit he overturned in the league and won it by an absolute canter, winning the treble his first year. It was the treble first year, wasn't it? He did win the treble. And
it was Rodgers,
no, O'Neill.
It was.
So I would probably, let's say, without discrediting what Rodgers has gave us, I would strongly disagree, because I think a lot of the way the landscape is now is down to Martin O'Neill.
Mm-hmm. And if you're coming for Baldy Chucker, trophy count, yes, but for playing style and excitement, Tommy Burns. And obviously had a great team playing more exciting football, but Brendan's got a fantastic record, but Martin O'Neill was amazing. It's a good question. And obviously, you're kind of tied to different legacies and playing styles and the context of whenever they did make that success. But Stephen, for your memory, for your own experience, would you say that Brendan Rodgers is the best manager since Jock's team?
I'm glad to say for my memory, because, my first kind of memories as a Celtic supporter would have been the Seville year, when it was really captured by it all, and every feeling, every nuance of a game, was starting to understand it and what it meant to support Celtic. Obviously, I was watching all the games from when I was younger with my granda. Always remember during the Seville run, he would smoke about 10 cigarettes and buy another pack of smoking another fucking pack of cigarettes. This is when he smoked. He doesn't smoke no more. But he just couldn't cope with the stress. I get that from him, the stress and kind of reactionary comments that I make when I watch Celtic sometimes. But I don't know. Look, you also have to give an honourable mention to Gordon Strachan, by the way. No one really ever talks about him and his achievements. I thought what he done was fantastic, getting out of the Champions League groups and won 3 in a row. Obviously, the 4th season kind of fell in its arse. I think he wanted to leave. Twice. He had a fantastic record. I know he wasn't everyone's cup of tea, and that's fair enough. But
Stephen, he was probably the most unpopular Celtic manager.
Yeah.
He has that long.
Yeah,
It's
and
mad, eh?
yeah.
Mad when you think about what
But-
he's done to.
I know.
I think I would do myself a disservice if I said disagree. Obviously, my memories, as I said, would have been towards the back end of proper memories, back end of Martin Lee's time. I'm not showing off, man. I just don't want to make an arse of myself and say something that I don't really, obviously what O'Neill done was fantastic, but I would go agree. I think Rodgers in my lifetime has been fantastic, but nuance that and kind of taper it off with the Ans team for me was really exciting and really, really captured the imagination. The football he played was incredible at points, but for the trophies, for the success, for the trebles, for just making it look piss easy at times, I'll agree and say Rodgers is the best manager since Jack Sting.
And a comment from possibly a new contributor. We are the people. Imagine a team just defending Bhoys in the box against O'Neill's team. It'd be against the land of giants, wouldn't it? Christ almighty. Okay. To in my opinion, I enjoyed the comments from both you guys, the three of you guys, for those two questions. A third question, okay, I'll try not to labour it too much, especially if it's kind of tiring, but a third question I had was...
Some might say tedious, Gav.
Exactly, that's the the club should give more opportunities to youth players in the first team, even if it means dropping points in the league or deprioritising domestic tournaments. To Ross.
Say it again, sorry, Gavin.
The club should give more opportunities to youth players in the first team, even if it means dropping points in the league, or perhaps even more so, deprioritising domestic trophies, such as the League Cup or maybe even the Scottish Cup, to give youth a chance. Such as, I guess, Arsene Wenger for Arsenal, whenever they deprioritised the league trophy.
No, I strongly disagree with that. I don't think you should be giving youth players games just because they're youth players and to get them in the team and hopefully they'll do well. They have to be good enough. Rodgers was actually in his press conference today talking about that pathway for youth players. He talked about how he brought Dewsbury Hall through at Leicester, where he gave him his debut at Leicester, and then the next day put him out on loan. And he went to Blackpool and a couple of other teams, and then he came back and he was ready. And he done it with... He spoke about how he done it with Ryan Christie, where he brought him in for, I think it was Inverness, and then he put him out to Aberdeen. He gained that experience, came back, gave him his opportunity in the semi-final, and he went for there. I think that get a first team spot has to be earned. People get things too easily now. Certainly in that English Premier League, young players get big contracts when they've not actually earned it. So for me, I think Rodgers has said it today that there is a pathway there if you want to stay, work hard and remain at Celtic and bide your time and get your head down. Rodgers will absolutely give you the opportunity, and if you're good enough, then that'll happen for you. But you can't just be, for me, you can't just be put into the Celtic team just like to sacrifice points in games that mean something just to be able to say we've brought youth through and we give youth an opportunity. For me, it has to be earned.
Good answer. Franny, what's your answer? Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I'm very, very same train of thought as Ross said. I don't think we can just be giving them out. Yes, I mean, it's probably ironic that you might see the last couple of games some youth players getting wee token games here and there, but I think that's more just managing the squad at this point. So no, I think these things have got to be earned. Then we can't be sitting saying Celtic a big club, then you're just giving games for the sake of giving games to try and hope that a guy works out. And I don't, as much as maybe we'll some folk look at the League Cup as the lesser competition. It's maybe only relevant if you win it with another cup or the league. I think that's what's killed the English League Cup. I think that's actually at one point it was one of the most prestigious competitions down there and stuff. But I think the fact that they've just diminished it so much by teams playing the reserves and even the media themselves kind of diminish it. I would hate for that to happen to a cup up here as well. I think we still, as a league, take that cup pretty serious, and we kind of try and keep it very. I like this tradition, and I like the fact that it's not quite a mid-season final, but it's early on in the season. It's not competing with any other, like, it's not competing with the Scottish Cup in that sense. It's done and dusted essentially before the Scottish Cup, for us anyway, kicks off, if you like. So I like the League Cup in that sense. So I would hate for them to. I mean, I would hate for us to that cup to get diminished. Maybe if you want to try and, I mean, it's for a different day, talking about how we maybe bring youth football through, because I think that's what we could all agree that that the way the youth football's working now, it's not working. I feel like maybe there's sort of rules that they could bring in where X amount. I mean, there might be all that already in place, but maybe X amount of youth players, maybe we need to at least be named on the bench for these cup games. But again, it's that going down to that it might be diminishing the cup a wee bit, but that would maybe be my idea of trying to bring youth on. I'm similar to Ross. I just wouldn't be giving guys games just for the sake of it, albeit that might happen in the next couple of games.
That's fair enough.
Aye, that's fine.
Aye.
Yeah, you talk about meritocracy, and if you're good enough, then you will play. We've got a comment from Baldy Chucker before we're going to Stephen here, and there's no point in a youth system if we don't use them. The problem is that we demand that we win every game, and that is the unique situation that we find ourselves in as supporters for Celtic. So we demand we win every game and every trophy, so the youth will never really get a fair crack. And the thing is, they used to get a fair crack maybe in like the 90s, and maybe and Martin O'Neill's day. I remember Martin O'Neill, he had like a small group of young players like Stephen Craney, Jamie Smith, Ross Wallace, Sean Maloney, and latterly Aidan McGarry. But I guess the people who were good enough got games, and the people who weren't good enough fell away. It seems like nowadays we don't really have anyone even stepping up to that grade. Stephen, what's your thoughts about it?
I mean, I think the weather issue as well. I think Baldy Trucker nails it. It's the pressure for Celtic to win every game, and every drop point is a catastrophe. And this is where it comes on for me as well, league reconstruction. If we increased it to the 14, 16 mark, then you might get more leeway of, putting young players onto the bench, bring them on in the last, 20 minutes of a game, bed them in that way. Because for me, I know what Ross is saying as well, there is the pathway there. Roger just spoke about it. But I think the examples are becoming less and less and less. And we've had the likes of, there's a Drew Bonner on the bench, Kyle Ure and them types of people, but they don't get on. So effectively, the Lord does to make up numbers. Do you know what I mean? And that might be because they aren't quite good enough, then the Lord will avoid because of an injury or a suspension. And that's probably a sorry state of affairs. So it's a question about league reconstruction as well. I know that's a wider conversation. It was kind of, it was dampened recently. I know the SPFL expressed interest to reduce it for some mad fucking unknown reason. But they're looking at the lower leagues now to expand them and keep it at 12 at the top league, which is fair enough for the time being. It's also a conversation for the coaching setup as well. Do we utilise our coaches? Do we have the best in class? I don't think so. So for that reason, feels like I'm on Dragon's Den. For that reason, I'm out. No, for that reason, I would disagree for now. But I'm the biggest advocate for youth. I want youth players to come through, but I know it's counterproductive when the pressure's so high, and then I'm the first to complain when we lose or drop a point. So I disagree.
almost a catch-22. Almost a catch-22 for youth development, unless you're really that fucking good. Right, okay, so I had like a few more questions for the agree to disagree, but I'm aware that there's a couple of other topics that I wanted to discuss. We're almost approaching the 2 hour mark. I'm going to ask one final question for the agree to disagree. I had a question about, I know.
Just
No,
ask it.
you're ask it. I'm laughing because you're going for midnight. I know you are. You're going for midnight.
Well, mate, we're easily surpassing midnight. Okay. Right, I had a question about John Kennedy, but I think I'll bench that. It's not sexy enough. I'll put this question to you. Okay. So Ross, starting off with yourself. The club and the ultra section are ideologically opposed, and the relationship with them will never ever heal, and always be friction between them.
Strongly agree. I think that they are. They have different views. They are
Stephen
for
Ready.
opposite ends of the scale. Aye, they're for opposite ends of the scale. The club, for me, the club and the people within it live by rules, make rules.
Don't dress like pricks.
The fan base.
Well, Gavin, come on.
The fan base, basically, the types that you're talking about, ultras, which is for me a bullshit name that's came from Europe in the last maybe 15 years. It was always a football casual. That's what they are for the most part. I know that it's probably evolved a bit and that they do obviously charity work and stuff like that, but I think that there'll always be friction because that group will never do, for the most part, as they're asked, and they'll always do things that the ordinary fan won't do to stand out, to make points, and at times they embarrass the club, and there'll always be, there definitely absolutely always will be that friction. Obviously the common denominator is that they both, for me anyway, want Celtic to be the best version of themselves that they can be, but it's all the other things that go with it that they're just never going to. But I mean, to be fair, you could say that in all walks of life, really. Like nobody is ever going to agree on absolutely everything. It might not get to the friction stage, but not everybody agrees on everything. It'd be a boring world if we did. But what I would say is, if you asked me to pick a side, I'd be on the board side.
Can already hear James in it.
We've got Strange of the Doctor, kind of a diplomatic point. I don't know. Forever is a long, long time, and the current custodians aren't immortal. However, I would say that Peter Lawwell and Dermot Desmond might, give up the ghost eventually, but they will have successors. And as long as we live in a capitalist world, then their successors will be likely of the same ilk, with the same kind of targets, same aims, about progressing the club in terms of like a money-making venture, whereas the Ultras will never have those ideals, those goals. And I guess that's not probably where the division starts and ends, because you can have different goals but still be aligned. But I think, as you said, Ross, the board have to play by the rules. They have to be lawful. They have to maintain a certain standard, whereas the Ultras are a law unto themselves to an extent. So Franny, moving on to yourself. So the question was, the club and the ultra section are ideologically opposed, and their relationship will never heal. Possibly with the eventuality that they might even fracture even more so. What's your thoughts?
Again, I'm probably going to agree with a lot of Ross says, but I don't strongly. I probably more agree that they'll maybe stay apart, because I think Celtic use the ultras as much as the ultras maybe use Celtic, and like you touched on there, Gav, the board have got to kind of stick by the rules, I feel like, and much in the same way as, again, I don't like going back to this Rangers takeover, but there's a lot of folk wanting their chairman or CEO sacked because they're bringing statement after statement after statement out, a lot to do with their tifos and things like that. It's interesting they're offered the 49ers, but the 49ers apparently employed this CEO, so say what you want about what the Rangers fans know, but it's more for the fact that the Rangers, I can't remember his name, but the guy, the
Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart, this Patrick Stewart guy, he's obviously looking at it from a business point of view. He has to say what he has to say. So, and that'll be like the towing the party line, essentially, with the 49ers, because they're looking at it as a business. They need to think of it as a business. Similarly, what like our board are looking at things when it comes to the Ultras. They've got to toe the party line and look at it from a business point of view, unfortunately, from a sponsorship point of view, from a money-making point of view, which goes against every core value, essentially, of Celtic Football Club and what we were founded on. But whether we want to admit that or not, that is football now. Football has went miles away from what Celtic was founded for. Yes, the Ultras will try and I'm not going to say they're wrong. The Ultras will try and maintain that within Celtic Football Club. That is their given right to try and cling on to what Celtic, or how they see Celtic Football Club and what it means to be a Celtic supporter. But equally, I think Ross has said it in the past. I think to an extent they are everything they say they're not. Like, they get, as far as I'm led to believe, they get special access into the stadium for their tifos. They've had a safe standing section bought and paid for by themselves. Yes, I agree. Yes, I understand they pay a wee bit more for a season ticket, but on the offset, they got that part of the stadium built for them. But a later start, which they're apparently against. You're maybe fell victim to it sometimes, Gav. I think James has fell victim to it this season. The home cup scheme. I don't think James has managed to get a ticket for the cup final. But sure as hell, every one of the Ultras, every cup game, they come out that ballot and they're all next to each other. I mean, work that one out. Every year, every away game, they're at that and always sitting next to each other. European away games, they're always at that. So I don't think they're as far aligned for Celtic as they make out and Celtic make out. You can't constantly get that amount of tickets for coming out a ballot and not be aligned with the club. I think they're definitely in talking terms with the club, whether they like to say that they're not. I think they use the club, as I said, I think they use the club as much as the club uses them. Not going to ever discredit all their charity work they do. They're well within their right to say and push any message they want to push. Personally, myself, I would like to keep that away from football. For me anyway, I don't go to football for any political reasons or try and get preached at. Like, for me, that's coming away from the common man, which football was all about. It's about trying to just put the stresses of work and stress of life away for 90 minutes at the weekend. But I appreciate the world's moved on a bit. But for me, I would say I would agree that they probably will stay apart, but I think there is a chance they will align. But I also, as much as both sides of the party probably pretend they're not talking and are so far apart, Gav, I think anybody with half a brain can see that people within Celtic and people within that ultra groups certainly have dialogue and have fairly successful dialogue. And the tickets, away tickets, just in ballot coming out, constantly getting cup final and semi-final tickets out of ballot is proof of that for me.
Fair dues. And finally, Stephen, hi. Your
Hello.
comment on that particular issue?
First of all, Pally Lavery asked me about going to the Chris Sutton night in the Crumlin Star. I know it's on with Axon and what's his name again? Paul John. Fucking I forgot his name. I don't have a clue what night it is, mate. So let me know and I'll see what I can do. But look, see this. It grates my nerves. It's GB and the board debate all the time. And I know that what Franny said about communication, but evidently today that the Green Brigade put out a statement saying that the Celtic board have rejected another TIFO that was going to be unveiled tomorrow. So again, there's a further breakdown in that communication they're talking about. Apparently, they haven't met with them personally in a couple of years. So I don't know what's going on in that aspect.
Why should they, Stephen? Not to be a dick. Why should they?
I was going to get to that. I don't know.
Danny's got it in for you tonight, like
he hasn't let me finish one point, like, and he's like, why? Fucking why?
I hate when the Green Brigade say that. It's like, oh, Celtic haven't been talking to us.
But then you just said they've got open communication, so
I would say, so tell me how they get they're at so many away games and sitting next to each other.
Clearly that's premeditated. I agree with you in that aspect of things. Look, at the end of the day, you said they pay a premium. I didn't know this on their season book, so they're going to get some privilege, so to speak, if they pay a premium on top of what an average punter would pay. And I appreciate the prices.
The stadium that got built for them.
Well, they didn't get the stadium built for them. They got the safe standing section built for them. You know. So I don't know how much that costs, but yeah, Franny, thanks very much. But I think that from my point of view, I agree. Probably strongly agree that there always will be a division between the ideologies of the board and the GB. It's quite evident, the whole Palestine stuff. The stuff that the GB put up and the connotations and the makeup of the Celtic boardroom. I believe there's conservative people in it and things like that. So there's always going to be that division. I like what the Green Brigade bring. Do I agree with everything they do? No, I don't. But I do think that they cop some amount of flack. It's unbelievable. Every other week, someone's complaining about them or someone's saying something about them, and it's like, Jesus Christ. If they weren't there, or the boys group in the other corner weren't there, Celtic Park, in my opinion, until someone had the balls to do it again, would be an absolute morgue. And that's being honest, it would be. And I know some people would say that maybe that's drove by the Green Brigade controlling the songbook and things like that, but everyone's an individual. Everyone can start a chant in the stands, but they don't do it in the Green Brigade doing it, and there's a reason for that. They're good at it. I just think they add a lot to Celtic Park, and their charity initiatives for the food banks and donating money at Christmas time, buying toys for kids. It's fantastic what they do. There's an element 100% that bring it down and bring the level down. I agree with that, but I just think, Gav, there's a serious amount of division. Even in the support, I don't know if the majority of people would want the Green Brigade in. I don't know. I know that they wanted the Celtic end, and that didn't happen. And they made a point going to the girls' game, and yeah, I thought that was publicity. By the way, I do agree it was just pure publicity stunt. To say that it looked like it was a load of shit that were never there to be seen again at any of the girls' games. But it's I strongly agree with what you said. It's unfortunate, but there has to be a separation somewhere, and it's between the Green Brigade and the board at the moment.
Yeah, I think the people who are with the Green Brigades and who support them, like, especially you see it online on Twitter, because Twitter's like this kind of weird space that's not really in line with reality, and people who identify with the Green Brigade, and I'm not saying that they're wrong, it's just that they have their own opinion, and I have my own opinion. Everybody should have their own opinion, but people who identify with them, it just seems to be much more vocal and more highlighted their views. But I think it's understated, very, very understated, to say that a lot of the people who go to Parkhead might not agree with a lot of what they stand for and what they support, but their general way of expressing themselves is by not expressing themselves. That might not make sense. What I'm trying to say is that the people who identify with the Green Brigade are very, very expressive, but a lot of people just go to the games and they just want to watch Celtic. And I guess one particular trend is that in general, the typical Celtic supporter is not as vocal as what they were back in the 90s. I think a lot of people would agree with that. But in terms of the Green Brigades and their political agendas, is very, very, very expressive nowadays. But a lot of people who don't identify with that, they just kind of keep silent. So whenever you log on Twitter and you might see an overwhelming majority of people supporting certain agendas represented by the GB, it's not representative of the full community of Celtic supporters. So I think it's just a kind of a false equivalent whenever you log into social media. It's probably not the point that you made, but just a point that I wanted to make. That's probably the final question I was going to do about agree to disagree. Now, we are over the 2 hour mark. We are 15 minutes away from the midnight mark. So at that point, Stephen might burst into like a ball of flames and run away like a little dwarf with like blue boots and a fucking cape. I don't know.
What the fuck is going on there? A dwarf? Jesus Christ.
I was going to do a little section on this day. It was put to me by Ross, and I think it'd be a dereliction of duty if I didn't bring it up. So, on this date, the 9th of May, 1998, Celtic beat St Johnstone 2-0, and it was stopping the 10 in a row. It should have been won previously on the last Sunday. It was a game against Dunfermline, which we were 1-0 up by a goal by Simon Donnelly, but we conceded at the very end of the game by a strike from Dunfermline, and it finished 1 each, which meant that the game, the league was going to carry on until the final day of the season. Now, it transpired that we really couldn't mess up on that day because Rangers were 2-1 up in their game against Dundee United. So if Celtic lost the game, then we would have lost the league, and Rangers historically would have clinched 10 in a row, which is unthinkable. But fortunately, of course, we won it. We won 2-0. So the league was clinched with 2 points to us in favour of over Rangers. And we also had a 2-goal advantage over Rangers. So even if we drew nothing each, technically we might have actually lost the league. By the way, coincidentally, Hearts were only 5 points behind Rangers in the league. Now, I was at the game. I was lucky to be enough at the game, and I'll never forget it. I think I was, I don't know how old I was. 1998. I would have been 12 years old. 12 years old, yeah. Stephen, you probably might not have had the opportunity. There's like moments in time whenever Celtic had milestones. Like I was 2 years old whenever we clinched the centenary double, whenever we won the league and the cup in 1988. I was 2 years old. But I've read about it. I've read the stories. I've watched the games and stuff like that. And I looked at a fantastic achievement. You probably never had that opportunity. You were, you're young enough probably not to have remembered that. But I'm sure Franny and Ross might have remembered this. But it was a fantastic day. It was a fantastic day that the supporters ran out onto the field and things like that. I'm going to start with yourself, Franny. Where were you for that day? What was your recollections of it?
Yeah, I was actually at the game too, Gav.
Yes.
I was fortunate to be at the game with my dad. And instead, I would need to ask my dad, but we picked the tickets up for just outside the supporters club on London Road off a guy who obviously was sitting next to us, and he had a coupon on for, don't know how much he put on. He put on Celtic to win 2-0 in Marston first goal, so he had a doubly good day, that boy. But I just were memories of it was a cracking day. Sun was shining. Obviously just go to the game. Obviously I was being 13 at the time, Gavin. had my Celtic top on and just going there. I was actually sitting at the East Stand, but I was right in the very back row, just kind of up the corner above where the Green Brigade would be, but right at the very back row. And obviously we got off to the perfect start. What was it? 12 minutes or something, I think it was. Larson scored in.
2,
3.
I think.
Was it? I thought it was a wee bit later. But I scored a great goal, and then it was
a fantastic goal. It was outside the box. Fucking amazing.
Curler. And it was just one of the games where I like, memory is a bit vague in a sense of it, being 13, but I can't remember us having tons and tons of chances. I think St Johnstone had a couple of chances we scored, but then obviously that one where brought back it, just breaking up. It was McNamara, and for all you could see was brought back in the middle of the box, and he plays the ball over, and a guy that had a very indifferent season just stuck it away nicely, and just for that moment on, it was absolutely party time. I can remember the stadium just felt like it was rocking. Once the final whistle went down, my uncle and cousin sat in the same stand, but at the very front row. So we went down and met them, and it was, what a day. What a day. At the time, probably 13-year-old laddie, didn't really appreciate how big a victory it was. But to say that I was actually there just was brilliant, Gav.
Yeah. It was the only time I've ever been on to the pitch at Celtic Park. It was
I fucked myself if I tried to go into the pitch.
It was absolutely euphoric. I remember dodging the steward, trying to jump on, and then lifting up a little bit of the turf just as a souvenir, which most people would do. Ross, going to ask you a question, put you on the spot. Could you name the starting 11? And just as a little hint, Bratback was a sub.
Wow.
Goalkeeper.
Johnny Gould.
Yes. Defence.
Mark Reaper.
Yep.
Alan Stubbs.
Yep.
Stephen Mahe.
No.
I'm sure I've got the defence, I think.
Tosh McKinley.
No.
Captain. Ross, captain.
Aye,
Boyd.
Defence? Oh, aye, because I was thinking Paul Lambert, aye. Boyd, aye.
Well done, young man.
Aye, well done, Stephen. What's that?
On Google. I'm on Google.
Stubbs, Reaper, Boyd, McNamara.
There was an Italian defender playing for us as well.
Anone.
Yeah.
Anone is one. Anone. Midfield, Paul Lambert.
Yep.
Craig Burley.
Yep.
David Hanna.
No, but good.
By the way, that was a good shout.
He must have came on. He was there. Well, he was kicking about anyway. Many's that.
You've got
still 4 short.
3. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Right mid, left mid, and the 2 strikers, aren't you?
Well, you've got Larson, Donnelly.
Yep.
And what did you say, Franny? Right mid?
I would say you've got the left mid and another striker then.
What have I got?
I'm assuming we played 4-4-2, mate. We won the didn't fancy 4-2-3-1.
You've got Boyd, you've got Anone, you've got Reaper, you've got Stubbs, you've got Larson, you've got Burley, you've got Simon Donnelly, you've got Lambert.
I think I know the other striker.
Who was the other right back?
Oh, Reggie Blinker.
He came on as a sub.
Did he?
He came on as a sub in the 89th minute for Henrik Larsson. But you're missing a right back. I don't know if you might have said him already. No, who's a right back? He had a wee song. He had a wee song.
Ray.
Who?
A right back.
I'm joking.
A right back.
think
Go on.
well, the formations confused me then.
I know.
I think maybe one of the defenders might have been playing in midfield. Who was your typical right back for Celtic in the 90s? He had the song.
I'm stumped for this one, Gav.
So man.
There's another comment coming in. Is it in the comments, Gav?
Aye.
Is that?
Can you not see the comments?
Aye, but I thought Gav's.
McNamara, but I said McNamara.
Aye.
Did you?
Aye.
I really apologise then. Okay, so
That's what confused me. That's what totally confused me.
I was like, surely it's McNamara, but I said that.
okay, so apparently you've only got one more player to name. So you've got Boyd, Annoni, McNamara, Reaper, Stubbs, Larson, Burley, Simon Donnelly, Paul Lambert. You've got one more player.
Is it a striker, Gav, or is it midfield?
Midfielder.
Oh, well, it's not who I thought it was then.
He's not with us any longer.
O'Donnell?
All right. Phil O'Donnell, aye.
Oh, you're still with him, there, Ross.
Aye. I
was thinking it was Tommy Johnson.
I didn't think he'd started in that team.
The substitutes that came on were Harold Brattbach came on at the hour mark, Morton Weghorst came on at the 82nd minute, and Reggie Blinker came on at the 89th minute. But Larson scored on either the second or third minute. Brattbach scored in the 72nd minute.
Mm-hmm.
And that was that. That was a fantastic victory for Celtic. But unfortunately, a few days later, Wim Jansen opted to leave as the manager, while unhelpfully, Fergus McCann publicly said that if he didn't resign, then he would have sacked him. Anyhow, it kind of took the shine off somewhat of the victory, but in some ways, for the past 10 years before then, that was just the way that Celtic had operated anyway. But it was something that needed to be done anyway, and it was a brilliant occasion. For that particular season, Henrik Larsson scored 19 goals, I think, in the league. But two of the other kind of supporting scorers for Celtic were Simon Donnelly with 10 and Craig Burley with 10. I think in the history of Celtic, Craig Burley doesn't get mentioned a lot, but we would never have won that league without Craig Burley. He was such a powerful midfielder for Celtic. He used to play for Chelsea before then. He was so pivotal in that league victory. So and same with players like Mark Reaper as well. Funnily enough, Marco Negri, he got like 32 league goals in that season. It just shows how kind of up and down Rangers were having such a great goal scorer, but they kind of they lost a lot of games as well. But a brilliant league campaign. And we could have done it the previous weekend, but we made it difficult for ourselves. But it was kind of fitting that we did it at Parkhead against Dunfermline. Franny's trying to kind of get back in. But anyway, Stephen, as I was talking to you about, there are certain kind of milestones that I was too young to remember. But whenever you kind of read back, watch videos and stuff like that, does it seem like one of those occasions that you would have loved to have been there at?
Of course. Obviously, it was a pivotal moment in Celtic Football Club's history, stopping the 10. And I think everything from then has been kind of built from that legacy. Obviously, Fergus started it in '94 and he came to take over. He came with that 5-year plan. And it was doom and gloom. Like my granddad always tells me about that. And eventually stopping the 10 laid the groundwork for future years. And obviously, Dermot Desmond coming in. And then we kind of grow stronger. And as I mentioned, O'Neill coming in, winning the treble in his first year. So yeah, they're all pivotal moments in history. All them players you mentioned there will go down as all of them as legends, no matter how small of a part they played in the team. You know, talk about Larson. He went on to massive things in his Celtic career. So I mean, the King of Kings, and like Jackie Mack, Tom Bhoys still played a part in years to come. And it's just good to look back and even listening to they all use talking about it. And your memory's been at the stadium grabbing the turf. You want to get a feel of that, do you know what I mean? But I think for me as a supporter, I've experienced many highs, and as a Celtic fan, and never really experienced the lows that you would have in the 90s. I think I was only, what was I? I would have been 3 years old when we stopped at 10. So I wouldn't even have known anything about the club at that point. I would have probably worn a Celtic shirt because I would have had one on me. But, just knowing it and the gravitas of that moment in history, it's something that's fantastic. And as you say, you look back on it with fondness and use even more so. But it laid the groundwork for the success that I've reaped as a Celtic supporter, and you're forever grateful for people who played a part in that.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for your input in that. Guys, I guess we're on to almost 2.5 hours for the podcast, and we are hitting the midnight mark. I don't want to take the piss. I've really, really, really enjoyed getting your contributions for tonight. I've really, really enjoyed being on the podcast. I've not been on it for a few weeks, and my apologies to you guys and to the contributors because I've not been there. I really, really enjoy this. Hopefully we can do more of it. I'm on my way to Turkey next week. My first holiday abroad since before COVID. I know that I was in Lisbon for 2 days, but that was the only exception to being abroad since before COVID. I'm really looking forward to going away with my family. So I won't be on the podcast for a little bit, but I've really, really enjoyed it. I've got more topics and questions for tonight, but I'm happy to pass on to other guys to bring up in the next couple of podcasts. Otherwise, we'll just be fucking growing until the sun comes back up anyway. But I think we can probably call it a night tonight. But Stephen, Ross, and to Franny, who's probably, I don't know, if he's sleeping right now, it's been an absolute pleasure.
It's kids have woken up, so you have to.
I thought that's what it was.
Fair dues. But to the people in the comments, like P. McLaughlin, Baldy Trucker, Scott Howe, Tommy 55, everybody preceding them. Thank you so much for your contributions for tonight with you guys. It's just 3-4 guys just talking amongst ourselves. But thank you for kind of reminiscing with us and talking about Celtic right now and what we've got to look forward to. But we'll obviously get Celtic and Hibs tomorrow, 3 o'clock kickoff. It's going to be a tough game. Hibs have been the on-form team, apart from us, this season, especially in the latter half of this year. It's going to be a tasty affair. We're both in the top 6 anyway. Ross, just kind of final comments before we call it a night. What's your predictions for tonight? If you want to give me a lineup, please go ahead.
Well, I think it's going to be a tough game. Hibs they have been on a really good run. I think they might just secure 3rd place. I think you'll see Celtic will make a lot of changes. Actually, I think Brendan Rodgers alluded to that in his press conference earlier today or earlier yesterday. But I know I think that if you want a lineup, I would probably say, given the injuries and stuff, I would probably say Sinisalo, Ralston. I think he might go Trusty and Scales. Or Navroki might get a run out, but I think it'll probably be Trusty and Scales. Probably be Greg Taylor, I would imagine. Possibly Schlupp. I think the midfield will be McGregor will play. I think you might see Bernardo get a run out in place of Engels. And probably Hatate. And then forward line, Forrest, Yang, maybe Johnny Kenny, maybe either.
Is Maeda back in Japan? I never heard Brendan Rodgers talk about it in the press conference. Did his wife give birth? I don't know.
He never mentioned it, but he never mentioned that he was out of the game. He just mentioned that most of the guys that were out last week are still out. Nicholas Kuhn is back. He got a gash in his eye in training, but he's fit enough to play. It might well be that he'll play. It might be Forrest Kuhn, Johnny. I'd like to see Johnny Kenny get a start, but I think the likelihood is that he might come on. But I would like to see him get a start. I thought he looked pretty Pretty mobile anyway. He never got much of an opportunity on the ball, but I would like to see more of him in these next few games.
Can you please repeat your front three for me? Was it Ida?
Well, I'd give you a couple of variations, but let's just let's just go Kuhn, Forrest, and Ida.
Kuhn, Forrest, Ida. Fair enough. That sounds fairly solid and probably good enough to win the tie. Stephen, any variations to that? So Sinisalo and goal. Your defenders. Who are you going centre back?
Well, first of all, bring it back to the game. I think it will. You were correct in saying it, Gav. It will be a tasty affair because they're still battling out with Aberdeen for third place. They haven't secured that yet. And obviously, David Gray has been on a decent run. I know was it Chelsea lost? It wasn't it? We beat them. And then they quickly got back on the horse again, and I think they beat Dundee United in their corresponding fixture. So they're definitely a team that have a bit of consistency behind them, a style of playing, and a couple of cracking players in their squad for their level, like Martin Boyle, Rocky Bashiri, Josh Campbell, who's always a goal threat. So it'll be an interesting affair. I think what Ross said is correct. I think rotation, like I said, is in the title of the podcast as well. That Rogers has mentioned that is going to happen towards the cup final. We'll be seeing a few players coming in and out. So, I mean, going from what we spoke about, I think Sinisalo is going to continue. Kasper Schmeichel's back, but I would keep Sinisalo in between the sticks for now. Ralston will start at right back. Going to differ with Ross in the centre half pair, and I'll go Naraki and Trusty to come in. Taylor to start. I'll go Kalmak as the pivot like he always is. I'll go Bernardo and Rio Watate. And the forward three, I'll go James Forrest, Adam Maeda, and Yang. And my score prediction will be 4-1 to Celtic, all being well.
So you're dropping Engels, you're dropping Scales, and you're dropping Kuhn. Am I right in saying that? Yeah.
Well, Kuhn's not dropped. He just hasn't come back into the squad because of his injury. But he'd feature on the bench, obviously, if I was picking the squad.
Fair enough. Ida is going to step up to the mark for the remaining games. But I don't have overwhelming concerns with Ida for the remaining games. I think sometimes whenever he knows that he has to be the main man when there's no other option, I think that's whenever you get the best out of Ida. So I'm having a bit of faith. I'm not Ida's biggest fan. That's probably well known with you guys. But I'm kind of keeping the faith with Ida because of that particular unique motivation where he knows that if it's not him, then nobody's going to do it in his kind of centre forward position. And Johnny Kenny certainly not even broke his duck for Celtic yet. So Ida as the senior centre striker, I've kind of got faith with him. But either or from the two lineups that you've given me, I'm looking forward to it. I would imagine Trusty will come back. I would say maybe Trusty and Scales rather than Nawrocki, but it's been a complete carousel with the centre back, so I don't know what Brendan Rodgers is thinking. But we will find out tomorrow, 3:00 kickoff. Really, really looking forward to it. It should be a cracker of a game. So to Stephen, to Ross, and to Franny, our dearly departed Franny, it's been an absolute pleasure. And to everybody in the comments, it's been brilliant. Thank you so much for sticking with us. We're over 2.5 hours. We're past midnight. It's been brilliant. Loving it. So, guys, I guess we'll say goodnight and God bless and hail. And a wee prayer for the Yank Pope that Donald Trump got into power. No doubt he did. So we'll finish off on that point. Thank you and God bless. Good night. Cheers. Bye.